Hi, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good
Welcome.
evening. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're good to go.
Okay, great. The board is back in session at 7:01 from the executive. I know that there was some confusion. We had gotten some comments from members of the public that weren't able to access or participate, but that was because we were in executive session. So the board is now back in open session. We do have a public hearing scheduled for 7 o'clock. So I'm going to shift the public comment down until after that, so we can move forward with the scheduled hearing. So Vanessa, can you bring Mr. Parent from National Grid over? And while she's doing that, Mr. Purple, will you be kind enough to read the public hearing notice?
Absolutely. The Southborough Board of Selectmen shall hold a public hearing on Tuesday, October 5th, 2021 at 7 p.m. in virtual meeting to consider a request for permission by Mass Electric Company, National Grid, and Verizon New England Incorporated to install a new pole P11-5 to be located at 25 School Street. The meeting may be viewed by the public through a link located at https www.southboroughtown.com/remote meeting, Southborough Board of Selectmen, September 21, 2021.
Oops, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Purple. That being said, welcome, Mr. Parent from National Grid. You are muted. Are you with us?
I am here. Good evening.
Good evening. So we will turn the floor over to you to allow you to give us a brief background on, what it is National Grid is looking to do.
Sure. So this poll is to service there's a new dormitory building going in for the school there. And unfortunately, the closest pole on that side of the street has already been used to service another building. So there are no other poles on this side of the road. So they have to put one on that side of the road, public property, to serve this building.
Sorry, I guess I have to repeat that. I was muted. Thank you, Mr. Parent. We'll open it up to the board for questions and comments, and we'll start with Mr. Healy.
Hi, Mr. Parent. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
My only question is, I'm looking at, I don't know what page it is of your submission, but it's the one with a map. And is that, I just want to know what the street is. Is that School Street that I'm looking at, or is that the path that St. Mark's has put in? What exactly is the sort of designated roadway there?
So from the map I have, it shows us as being on School Street.
Okay, so there's Third House is on the left side of the map I'm looking at, and then there's a line that moves out to the street. The street it's moving out to is School Street.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Thanks very much. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Healy. Mr. Stivers.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Parent. Question, this new pole is going on the west side of School Street. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Just so I'm oriented correctly. Okay, good. And you've got enough room there to get the pole in without creating a hazard for the traffic on the street, et cetera?
Correct.
Roughly how far from the edge of the road is it going to be?
I'm not 100% sure. I'm not the actual engineer on this project, but usually our poles are at least 3 to 5 feet off the road to have issues with vehicles and things of that nature. There is a pole already on that side. I'm not exactly sure how far that is off the road, but in following the path of the primary wire across the street, it should be able to be at least in line with that pole, so that it meets that 3 to 5 feet off the road.
So no closer to the road than the other poles along that same side of the street?
It should not be any closer than that. Is the other existing pole an issue on that side of the street that
No, I
it's
actually,
almost too
I'm
close to the
not
road?
suggesting it is. I'm just trying to make sure this
Oh,
one's not going to be any closer.
No, it shouldn't be. I mean,
Okay.
the path the primary takes is not it's not a hard shot across the road right from that pole. So it makes a gradual turn. So it should be plenty enough room in there. So it's not a problem.
Okay. That's all for me, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Mr. Dennington,
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Ms. Malinowski.
No questions, thank you.
Great, and my question was answered as well. So thank you very much. At this time, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
Aye.
and Ms. Braccio, aye. So with the public hearing closed, we then have a motion to approve National Grid's petition to install new pole 11-5 at 25 School Street?
So move.
Second.
Okay, those in favor, oh, actually, Mr. Litt, I take that back. I am going to hold on the roll call vote on this. We didn't ask for public comment. So that being said, I will
Do we have to
well, the
reopen
public hearing's already
hearing?
closed. Yeah, the public hearing's already been closed. So,
Is there a
Okay.
reason we can't vote to reopen it?
Reopen.
yeah, exactly. Do we have a motion to reopen the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, roll call. Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
Aye.
and Ms. Braccio, aye. All right, as the public hearing is still open, if there are any members of the public that have any questions, please raise your hand. And I see Mr. Litt specifically.
Tim Litt, Woodland Road. Sorry to be the stick in the mud on this one. I have a standard comment on these poll hearings, which is a request that they be approved subject to not obstructing any present or potential future sidewalk. I'm always concerned that, as the town wants to move towards complete streets and having sidewalks, that we don't put obstacles in the way when we're doing new stuff. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Litt, much appreciated. Any other public comment on this particular item?
I'd be interested in Mr. Parent's comment about if there's space to do that here.
Okay,
Again, I'm not familiar with the exact street and the layout. Is there sidewalks there now or no?
no,
No.
Okay, so I mean, any projects that towns may have and involve National Grid and poles, usually if that comes down the road and something has to be done, new sidewalks need to be put in, then there are projects that get done where they move the poles to accommodate sidewalks. So I mean, if it's a newer road and we're putting poles in for the first time and the town wants us to consider that, then we usually follow that. In other towns where they've reclaimed some of the road or reclaimed one side of the road or the other, they have the poles on the back side of the sidewalk instead of on the front side. But an existing pole line,
Mhm.
we may not have the ability to factor that in when we're installing the pole, other than following our normal procedure of staying 3 to 5 feet off the road. And then also, like, there could be some other hindrances there, but it doesn't appear to be one here, so.
My concern is that it's always expensive to move poles, and if we can avoid that by planning and thinking now, I'd appreciate it.
Could we vote on this with the request that they make reasonable efforts to locate the pole in a position so that sidewalk could be accommodated there?
If there's a motion to that
Well,
effect.
exactly. I think Mr. Stivers.
The hearing is not closed now, so I can't
Correct.
make that motion
Correct.
yet. but-
So we're gonna move there next. So I see no other hands. If anyone else has public comment on this particular item, please raise your hand. Seeing none, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
I'm sorry, Andrew, I didn't hear you. Okay, thank you.
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski, Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
Aye.
Ms. Brascio, aye. The hearing is closed. Mr. Stivers, do you have a motion?
Uh, I'll move that we approve the request for the pole position with the request that to the extent reasonably possible, National Grid locate this pole in a position that would accommodate a sidewalk along the street on that side.
Second.
Okay, roll call. Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
Aye.
and Ms. Brascio, aye. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Parent, for coming, and good luck as you move forward with your poll.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you, you too. All right, I am going to shift down to public comment, which we missed originally. If there's anyone that would like to speak under the first public comment, please raise your hand. I see none. Okay, thank you very much. So we will move on to volunteer interview, Neetu Seagal for the Scholarship Committee. If we could bring her over, that would be appreciated. Good evening, welcome. Can you just unmute just to make sure we can hear you? Okay,
Good evening.
perfect.
How are you all?
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Sure.
If you could just take just kind of a few seconds, a few minutes, just kind of give us a little background on you, what interested you in the Scholarship Committee, that would be appreciated.
So my name is Neetu Segal. I'm a resident of the town. I'm actually born and raised in Southborough, moved back here in 2012. Have multiple family members in town that go through the school system, and I myself started at Finn School and graduated from Algonquin in 1998. I'm particularly professionally, I am a attorney. I work for a company called Cushman & Wakefield. I'm their head labor and employment attorney for North America. But I'm trying to find ways to give back to my community, especially since it gave a lot to me. During my high school years at Algonquin, I benefited from a lot of different scholarships that I had been awarded, notably one that was awarded to me by the Southborough Police Department for my community service. And I had noticed the vacancy and thought that it would be a great way for me to start supporting the town. I actually recently had run into Officer Mattioli at Dunkin' Donuts and sort of remembered the experience of him giving me my scholarship when I was a senior and thought this was a great way to kind of, give back to my own community and help support this and great initiative.
Great, and thank you for stepping forward. It's always wonderful to have new people step forward and new volunteers. I will share for the board that I did speak to Isabel Murphy, and she had the opportunity to speak to Ms. Segal. She's actually is very supportive and is looking forward to the opportunity to be able to work together on this. So that being said, I will open it up to the board for questions, comments. Mr. Stivers.
Thank you. Welcome, and thank you very much for volunteering for this. Actually, my question was, why are you interested in this? And you've already answered that. So you appear to have great qualifications, and I am a strong supporter of your appointment here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stivers. Mr. Dennington.
I also don't have any questions. Thank you very much for your interest, and I also will look forward to supporting you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Malinowski.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Is this your first time volunteering for our town board or committee?
So I think many, many years ago, I did initially, but I had to recuse myself. I honestly have to tell you, I can't remember which committee it was for. My father became ill and I had to recuse myself. That was probably right around 2006. And life took some turns. So just looking to get back involved.
Okay, great. Well, you have an impressive background and I look forward to supporting your appointment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Healy.
Yeah, I don't have any questions. Very good reasons for wanting to get involved. And I'm a bit of a minority in this, but I never think you can have too many lawyers. So
Great. Thank you, Mr. Healy. And again, thank you for stepping forward. It's always great when we have new faces and new people interested in, filling some of these vacant positions.
Sure, happy.
So that being said, do we have a motion to appoint Nita Segal to the Scholarship Advisory Committee expiring 6/30/22?
So move.
Is
Second.
there a second? Thank you. Roll call. Mr. Dennington.
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski.
Aye.
Mr. Stivers.
Aye.
Mr. Healy.
aye.
And Ms. Braccio, aye. Welcome. And again, thank you for serving. And actually, the Scholarship Committee is coming before us on, I believe, the 19th. So we may see you again within the
Great.
next couple of weeks. So
Wonderful.
again, thank you so much and have a great night.
Thank you so much. You as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda, Cable Committee recommendation on renewal cable agreement. Good evening, Mr. Rubenstein. Welcome. Oh, sorry, Ms.
Ms.
Malinowski.
Braccio, I'm going to recuse myself from this conversation.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Rubenstein, welcome. How are you, Barry?
I'm relatively well, and I hope you can't see me.
We cannot, and that's okay.
Okay, and I apologize for that. I had facial surgery today. I'm swapped in bandages. I don't want to traumatize the board or your viewers, so I thought it better to approach it this way.
Barry, thank you so much. This is quite the package you guys have put together. And once again, the right people on the right committee make such an amazing difference. So if you would like to walk the board through, where you're at, how you got here, and that would be appreciated. The floor is yours.
Happy to do it. So most of you will remember we've been here twice before, once for Charter, once for Verizon. This is a very different situation, and just briefly the history here. When Comcast built out their Framingham network, either intentionally or unintentionally, it allowed them to access a small number of subscribers in the Pine Hill area. And so they obtained a license from Southborough to do that for Southborough residents. They have no connection to SAM whatsoever. So those people are getting Framingham public access channels, not SAM. So as a price for doing that, they agreed to pay a percentage of their gross revenues each year. The old license was 4%, and the new one, we brought them up to 5%, which is what Verizon and Charter pay. So they're equivalent in that, but that's the only way that it's the same. So it's essentially free money for SAM. They don't use any SAM resources, but they're getting about $2,300 a year, in effect, a royalty. So Comcast can operate in Southborough. So that's pretty much it. It's pretty straightforward. The only thing I would mention, this has been reviewed and approved by council, but when I was reviewing it yesterday, I noticed some language that I think is a little ambiguous that I'd like to go back to council with. It doesn't affect any of the material terms of the agreement, but it would make me feel better if he assures me that he's comfortable with it again. But other than that, I would, and the committee has recommended that the selectmen approve this renewal license. And I would like to thank Will Warren, Kathy Will, for my colleagues on the committee for all the hard work they put into these 3 licenses.
Great, thank you, Barry. And again, this is quite the document. And thank you again for the amount of time and effort that you put into, as you say, a $2,300 a year royalty. Kudos to you all. So I'll open it up to the board. Mr. Dennington.
Thank you, Barry. You've explained it very well. And, this will be my first time participating in cable renewal contract. I mean, the main thing impressed on me is this is just such a narrow scope. And as you say, that's good that we can get some money, even though, as you said, it's kind of free money. So I don't really have any substantive questions. I did, the contract was pretty dense, and I was going to ask whether we could have council review it, but you're already on top of that. So that's all I have to say on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dennington. Mr. Healy.
Hey, Barry, how are you?
Good.
How many customers do they total are covered by the agreement?
They have 32 subscribers in Southborough.
Okay, I suppose it would be unreasonable to include in the contract for them to stop sending me requests, since I obviously don't fall within their umbrella area. But I think that would be selfish of me to request that go in the contract. So other than that, I don't have any questions.
Great, thank you, Mr. Healy. Mr. Stivers. Oh,
Thank
sorry.
you. Okay, welcome, Barry. I've actually attended most of the cable committee meetings. I think they've done a great job, not only on this one, but on all of the contracts. We've had good legal representation with an expert in this particular area. So I think we're well positioned with this, and I strongly endorse it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And again, Barry, thank you for all the hard work that your whole committee has put in. It's pretty remarkable. That being said, do we have a motion to renew the cable agreement for Comcast dated September 20th, 2021 through September 19th, 2031?
Lisa?
Yeah, Sam.
Should we do this pending? Barry said he wants to confirm one more piece. So
I was going there next.
Oh,
Yep.
sorry.
Yep. No, that's fine. Let's see, through September 19th, 2021, subject to final review by council.
So move.
Is there a second? Oh,
I'll
wait.
second it.
Okay, for discussion. Go ahead, Marty.
Yeah, this kind of previews a motion that's coming up later with respect to the town administrator's contract. Should we, not only just for consistency, but also subject to review and there not being any substantive changes to the terms of the proposed contract?
Okay. With that amendment,
So move.
is there a second?
I'll second my own
Okay,
verbiage. All right.
great, Marty, thank
Brilliant
you.
amendment.
Roll call, Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Ms. Braccio, aye. Great, Barry, thank you very much, and if you'll please just let us know any feedback from council.
Thank you all very much.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank
Speedy
you.
recovery.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Mr. Purple, can you text Ms. Malinowski and tell her she's safe to come back in? And while we're doing that, can we bring over Chief Achilles, please? Great. Thank you, Chelsea. Welcome back. And
Chief Paulus is also here. Did you want him to
absolutely. Yep.
be
Sorry.
available? Okay.
Yep. Sorry. I'm missing that Chief Paulus was there. So welcome to both the chiefs, obviously. Chief Achilles, Chief Paulus, who would like to lead off the update on the regional dispatch discussions?
Well, I can take the lead, and then Chief
That's fine.
Achilles and or Chief Paulus can fill in.
Sure.
So thank you for having this back on the agenda. Excuse me. I think that it's timely. When we last left this subject, the board had agreed. I see the chief has got his Red Sox hat on. That's great. So, when we last left this discussion, the board had agreed that they wanted to move forward in an exploratory fashion, and that is, was the the goal that I took from this. Since that time, there have been conversations with the Collins Center. And again, the communities that are interested in exploring the regional dispatch are Hopkinton, Hudson, Grafton, Marlborough, Southborough, and Westborough, looking at Regional Emergency Communication Center District. And so there's been conversations, I think, pursued more from the Westboro chief, fire chief, with, towards State 911 and the Collins Center, to see about looking at a study of these communities and how we do and what we do on our own in terms of dispatch, and then looking at what it would mean for us to do something collaboratively in a regional center. And unbeknownst to me, inadvertently, I was left off the initial round of emails and everything. So Chief Achilles and I assumed I was in the loop, and I wasn't in the loop. So, but the chief made some extraordinary efforts, and all of a sudden I was getting emails from State 911 and Collins Center, bringing me back into the loop. But Collins Center and State 911 have I think a standing agreement that State 911 will fund Collins Center to do regional studies or to do studies for regional dispatch. And so this moved pretty quickly to the engagement of Collins Center for a regional study. And that is looking to be kicked off with Tom Kennedy from the Collins Center, I believe on October 13th, and that meeting is going to be in Southborough at the public safety facility. All of these communities that are involved in this, and I've talked to the chiefs about this, are at different places. Some of these communities want to run because they're looking to replace existing equipment or put in new stations. And some communities like us, I think, are taking a little more of a, let's look at each domino type of approach and understand what we have locally first, and how, whether what we have locally is what we should have locally. And then once we determine that, let's compare it to what it means to us on a regional basis. And so my thought tonight, I'll put that on the table, and then we can open up the conversation if the chiefs had things to add, is that there needs to kind of be more of a team approach. And I think Ms. Malinowski alluded to this last time we discussed this, that this issue is bigger than just me. And I agree that it is. And I would prefer, I think, to have a more collaborative approach from our side. And so I think that when it comes to looking at these studies and being involved in this process and moving forward, I think there should be a group or a team, at least from the Southborough side, at this point in the study, which would comprise of the two chiefs, of myself, and a member of the Board of Selectmen, to at least, I don't want to say shepherd the process, but at least to be involved and make sure that our voices, our needs, and our interests are served in these studies, so that, we get the information that we want the first time without having to, to do, almost peer reviews after the fact. So I'll turn it over to either of the chiefs if they have anything that to correct me on, to add, or something I missed.
Chief Achilles, would you like to start?
Working with Mark and Chief Paulus, I think Mark hit it on the head that we're fortunate that whether the firm that we would select or not, but is working with 911 to foster this study so that we can at least get information on best practices, what we currently do, what are some of the service gaps, what are the strengths of the current services, weaknesses, and opportunities. I agree with Mark that having both myself and Chief Paulus, himself, and a member of the select board monitoring this and being involved in the conversations, that way nothing gets missed and all interests are kind of paying attention. And then at the end of the study, at least we would, as a group and also the select board and the community, know where we stand and what opportunities exist, whether we continue that feasibility to be regionalized, or do we feel at the time that we can meet the standards that we want to meet in our own community. So I think we're on the right track. And I think, as Mark said, is getting as much information from an outside entity is important. And I think it was talked about before. It's not a study that we have to lead or have our own, but I think afterwards we can decide what are we going to do with that information.
Great. Thank you, Chief Achilles. Chief Paulus, welcome. We haven't seen you in a while.
Nice to be here.
It's great to see you. Anything you'd like to add?
Just like to say I'm actually excited. The other chiefs that are involved, police and fire, I think myself and Chief Achilles have great relationships with all of them that are involved. I'm also excited that the process is going to be very transparent and that we're forming this unit. Obviously, as this leaks out, got some questions and a little bit of anxiety on the with the dispatchers, the part-timers, the officers wondering what's going on. So I think that this is a great move. We're going to use 6 months to gain a boatload of information, and we'll make the right decision at the end of the day. I'm very confident of that.
Great, Chief. Thank you. And I think that's a very important perspective in for our dispatchers, in looking ahead and, wondering where we're going and what that could potentially mean for them as well. So I appreciate what you said, and I appreciate the transparency as well. I'll open it up to the board. Ms. Malinowski.
I think this is a great step forward. I just have probably one general question that I appreciate you kind of going back with. And it wasn't very clear to me in the Collins presentation, but are they going to look at what's best for Southborough, or are they just studying it, Southborough, as it would fit in with these other towns specifically? So I guess what I'm getting at is are they going to look at whether Southborough going in with 2 other towns is best for Southborough, or are they only looking at Southborough in this total group? And you don't have to answer that. That's kind of my outstand. It's unfair for me to expect you to have an answer to that, but that's what I'd like you to take back, unless you have an answer.
Chelsea, I think that the way the study is being designed, that I think it answers a couple questions. One, they're going to look at each town individually and then look at it collectively. So I think at the end of the study, and we should pay attention to this throughout it, is what is happening locally and what is the advantage or disadvantage of doing it collectively. And I think we'll be able to get the information at the end of which way to start to lean based on their information.
So I'm sorry, Ms. Malinowski, I have one clarification. So we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're looking at 6 different communities. Are you suggesting that potentially, rather than the 6, maybe it makes sense for 3 of the 6 to do something? So are you?
I'm asking, is the study going to cover that aspect of it?
Okay, because I think that they do want to understand how we do what we do individually and then collectively as this regional group. I just don't, I'm not sure whether they're going, I can't speak to it. I think this is something for the discussion on the 13th, is that, are they going to then take into account, it doesn't work. It works for 4 of you, but then there are 2 of you that I think really don't fit well with, with the rest. Is that kind of what you're suggesting?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Andrew, do you have something specific to that?
This just goes along with Chelsea's point, which is the memo referenced Hanover and Norwood instead of our communities. I don't know if that was just a typo, but that led to some of the confusion about whether the end product would be something that would be reviewed specifically with Southborough.
So the Collins Center does a lot of these, and I really think they wanted to give a flavor of what the agreement will look like, but obviously not the final version, because yes, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense with those 2 communities looking at a collaboration up in this area. So point taken.
Thank you, Andrew. Mr. Healy.
Yeah, I think the proposal for discussion is a good one. I think the recommendation to have a member from the Board of Selectmen, this is not a volunteer speech, but having a member of the Board of Selectmen as part of the group subcommittee, whatever we want to call it, is a very good idea. Because my main concern about this, and it's somewhat aligned with what Chelsea was talking about and what Andrew referenced, and I could see this getting away from us, because it just strikes me there are so many variables here, starting with the number of communities, the difference in size of the communities. I'm not even sure Hudson, Marlborough, Southborough, Westborough, Hopkinton, all contiguous, and then Grafton's thrown in there. We've got at least, I guess Grafton's contiguous to Westborough, right? Okay, so there is, but it just strikes me that whether it's a subset of communities might make more sense. Again, I just see the potential for getting away from us, and I would hope whoever, and again, this is not a volunteer speech, whoever from the Board of Selectmen would end up on the group, that it'd be a regular reporting on exactly where things go, because I think that it's an intriguing idea, but it's one we really have to ride herd on.
All right. Point taken, Mr. Healy, on me volunteering you for things like, I get it. Mr. Stivers.
I'm actually reminded of Shakespeare. Methinks the man doth protest too much here. It sounds like a volunteer.
Yeah, I'll throw out some Shakespeare quotes too, Sam, that have a different ending.
Good. I think it's a great idea. I have a question for the chief. If we get you out of here in 10 minutes, can you get the game to the game in time tonight?
Oh, yes, believe so.
Without using your lights.
No pressure, though.
Good. Great idea. I think it's an interesting challenge in terms of utilization rates, because if you look at the numbers they provided, Hopkinton has about 1,600 calls per 10,000 residents, and Marlborough has about 4,000 calls per 10,000 residents. So that's a pretty good spread. So I think it's going to be an interesting challenge to find something that works for that range of utilization, if you will. But I think, to Chelsea's point, you may come out of it with a suggestion that maybe these towns that's a subset of this group are natural candidates for regionalization, and one or more don't fit in that model as well. So I think that's a good way to go. One thing that I would suggest thinking about as far as the Collins Center concerns slide, one of their end slides, is addressing issues of local impact, control, et cetera, through something like this, because I've seen in some other regionalization things that sometimes one or more communities sort of get carried along by the others, and you wind up, for example, winding up paying for things that you might not be real happy for, given the pressure from the others in the group to have assessments for cost coverage on these kinds of things. So I don't know that there's a perfect solution to that, but I think that would be an important thing to address. And Collins Center folks or other public safety chiefs out there may have ideas about how we address those kinds of things in other circumstances. So I think it's worth considering that kind of a question. My guess is that will come up as it's debated in the town down the road here. So if we've got a good answer that says, here's how we deal with those kinds of things, to not be pulled along in directions that we're not comfortable with through some sort of a regionalization structure like this, I think that would be useful. So again, great idea. And again, hope that it will turn out to be as useful as we all think it will be. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Stivers. Mr. Dennington.
I don't have anything to add other than what I said before.
Great, thank you. And thank you again, chiefs. I had some of the same concerns, as Chelsea had mentioned, is what specific we may be looking to be able to get out of this as well. But I think it's an opportunity I don't know that we can pass up, to explore and looking at, what the future may be for capital and whatnot at the public safety. And it's not really costing us anything to do it. So it certainly behooves us to take this step forward and see where we come. So I thank you very much for that. I thank you both for coming. And so back to the Board of Selectmen piece. I certainly am not going to volunteer for this. Based on the other four of you, I know my plate is full. Is there anyone that would be interested in doing this, that the board can make a decision based on that? And Marty, I'm not putting you on the spot or anything because, you know, I think you are the police liaison potentially. So again, I'm not throwing your hat in the ring, you know, just as Mr. Stivers did. I'm not going to quote Shakespeare, but
I know, thanks for pointing out that that would be a likely conflict of interest for me, so.
We could change liaison assignments, though.
we could do that. I mean, Marty, if you don't have an interest, that's totally fine. You know, there's four other members of the board that I'm sure we could find someone that would. So that being said, if anyone would like to raise their hand and, you know, offer to work with the chiefs and Mr. Purple.
I would be happy to do it, seeing as this was one of my goals for last year. That was not accomplished yet, so.
Okay, even
unless somebody else wants to do it.
I'd be delighted to have Chelsea do it.
Yeah, I know, even muted, I heard Marty's big sigh of relief on that one. So Chelsea, that would be great if you would. And as you said, it was one of your goals as well. Andrew, unless you have a desire to no, okay.
Happy to defer to Chelsea.
All right. So Ms. Malinowski, thank you for stepping forward to do this. I know your plate is full, but much appreciated. So Mr. Purple, Chiefs, I don't know that there's anything further you require from us. Just keep us posted. And I'm sure Ms. Malinowski is very good at doing that. And enjoy the rest of your night, Chiefs. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
So we'll make sure that Ms. Malinowski is included in the emails from the Collins Center and anything else in that, so that she's kept in the loop on any meetings, any updates.
And you said the first meeting's next week?
I believe it's October 13th. I will get you that information.
All right. I'll be looking for a babysitter.
Well,
Awesome.
I need to be at the meeting, so I'm out, but Mr. Healy's available.
Yeah. All right, great. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to reports. I wanted to give. Okay, sorry, it wouldn't let me unmute. I just wanted to give the board an update on a call that Mr. Purple, myself, Ms. Galligan had with Mass DOT regarding the HCVE traffic study. It was a great conversation. I know there was talk of on what we could do potentially. I know the option had come up on taking the traffic restriction off of Main Street. So one of the things that was talked about is it's actually not as easy to do as you would think. You actually, I think they said, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, that it's very rarely, if ever happened, that someone actually withdrew or rescinded a restriction that was put on. There is a process similar to what you go through to get the traffic restriction put on, or the truck exclusion, excuse me, not traffic restriction, but the truck exclusion put on. So you'd have to go through a process for that as well for Route 30. Another thing we talked about was the global study a little bit, and where these trucks may or may not be coming from, and some of the things we could possibly do in the short term. As far as Route 9, there seems to be, some issues with trucks taking U-turns. I mean, I got caught in one the other day. I shared with them on Middle Road there. A truck got stopped he was heading eastbound. He took the turn to go westbound and he couldn't make the turn. So he backed back up into the eastbound lanes. And, that was one of the things we talked about. We also talked about if some of these trucks may or may not be going to Ken's, and they're coming off of 495 and they're, going up to the turn at Crystal Pond, not realizing they can't make that left. So we talked about some options short term of what we could do as we work towards, the global study and what it is we might want to do. We talked a lot about signage on Route 9, and they were very willing to entertain putting additional signage as far as turnarounds on Route 9 at multiple places on Route 9, trying to direct the truck vehicles down to the Cloverleaf at potentially 85, because that's what made the most sense, or heading westbound, directing them onto 495 to take the turn and loop back around on Route 9 eastbound. So it was overall, it was a very positive conversation and moving forward. There's still requirements of what they need for the truck exclusions, and the study will provide some of those things. Mr. Purple, what did I miss?
I don't think you missed anything, Madam Chair. I think that was a pretty comprehensive review of the phone call. Again, it's always comforting when the state says, we've never done that before. But again, it was good setting it up that we're looking at this study. And I think that they know what to expect from us. So it's not going to be a shock to the system. And I think they're already thinking about the mechanics of how to make it happen once we reach back out to them, hopefully sometime, in the spring to look at implementing.
Well,
Yep.
when you say, can I just jump in?
Sure,
Just
go ahead.
when you say the mechanics of making it happen, making what happen?
So whatever the results of the study are and whatever the board decides
Okay.
that they want to do from that,
Yeah.
then we've got to get the state to, to ultimately approve that. So, so making happen what this board wants to happen. How's that?
TBD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lisa,
Go ahead, Sam.
a question. Did the conversation include the suggestion that we received from one of our citizens, the possibility of moving the Crystal Pond intersection a couple hundred feet to the east to allow for a U-turn at that newly positioned traffic light so you could go into Ken's there and make that basically a turnaround for trucks?
So I think we touched on that to some level, Sam, but we didn't specifically go down that path. I didn't. I know that there was some concern expressed to me about that as well. I mean, that's something we certainly can go back and ask. I know there was a concern I had received comment from someone that's in Madison Place, that if you come out and you have a tractor trailer that's 53 feet long and now it's stopped at a light and the light cycle changes and it's blocking potentially Crystal Pond as well. So I'm certainly happy to go back. That was something that I did not ask when we had the meeting, but I'm sure that's something we can certainly send back to them as well.
Maybe their engineers could be clever enough to figure out some way to, basically the bottom line is if one could allow a U-turn for Ken's trucks coming east on Route 9 so they could actually get into Ken's at that point with a left turn, that could cut down on some portion of truck traffic trying to get down Flag Road potentially there. So, and
I think as well, Sam, I think that the traffic study that's being done is going to give them some better idea of where the trucks are coming from as well.
Good. Okay.
So we certainly can add that to the list and go back out with that. No problem.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Brascio, can I
Yes.
ask a question? So, and you may have said this, but are there specific signs that they suggested could go up on Route 9 to tell trucks not to go down Flag?
So they were going to put a sign up basically, and Mark, correct me if I don't get the verbiage on this exactly correct, but it was going to be a sign telling people that a turnaround would be, and it would direct them to 495. The exact verbiage he didn't have, but I mean, that's basically the gist. One would be put before Flag Road.
Okay.
So the trucks would know to just, go up and do your cloverleaf turn at 495, which kind of shocked me. I was kind of surprised that they would suggest that, but and again, it's a short-term fix. It's not something that's going to fix things going, in the long term. But I think at least at this point, it shows a willingness to try to find something as we wait for the global study. Mark, is there anything further you want to add to that piece?
No, I think that was pretty accurate. I kind of was surprised as well that the state was advocating to, use the cloverleaf as a turnaround. But okay.
Yeah, and we can follow up with them on the time frame for the signs, but it was a very positive conversation, and we very much appreciated them making the time to talk to us. So that being said, for that, I just wanted to remind any members of the public that may be watching that Heritage Day is coming up before our next meeting, and there is a parade at 10 o'clock, as well as the booths and the library sale of books are from 10 to 3. So it's something you do not want to miss. So that being said, we will go to members report. Trails Committee recent public walk tour with DCR of the proposed Peninsula Trail. That was Mr. Dennington. Go ahead, Andrew. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. So I just wanted to let the board know that the Trails Committee hosted a public walking tour. It was back on the 25th, so it was immediately after the CERT lunch that we had attended, and there was a very good turnout of about 30 people. It was guided in part by a DCR ranger that explained the area and as well as some of the historical features of the area. So I found it very interesting because it kind of put a, you could see specifically what the proposed Peninsula Trail that the Trails Committee has been working on. So if you're not familiar with it, this is where the intersection of Central Street and Route 30 meets. There is a, it's technically really, you're not supposed to be there. It's no trespassing, but behind there's a lengthy paved trail which goes along the reservoir, which I know the Trails Committee is working to try to work with DCR to have public access for a trail there. So I'm sure we'll be hearing more about it in the coming months. Thank you.
Great, Andrew. Thank you very much. Mr. Purple, Town Administrator's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have one item this evening. I just wanted to put in a plug for the ALS 1 golf event at the Southborough Golf Club this coming weekend for the 9th, 10th, and 11th. This is something that we've done for the past couple of years and recognizes a couple of our town officials who we've lost to ALS, Mr. Schifrin and as well as Mr. Wilson. Brian Shea has continued to accept his role in helping to coordinate this. He's been working with Bill Harrison from the management company and Jen DiMartino from ALS 1. The way this would work is that golfers would go, they will pay the regular greens fees. The managed company will commit to donating approximately half of the proceeds from green fee sales to ALS 1 from the 3-day weekend. Players will have the ability to make other voluntary donations as they pay their greens fees. And ALS 1 is also going to have a QR code at the clubhouse that individuals can scan and make donations, additional donations if they so choose. This is a great, it's been a great season. The rain has been very good. The course is in great shape. The play has been pretty heavy all year, and hopefully it will continue, continue right through the weekend. We get 3 good days. Last year, I believe there was a day of rain. Mr. Shea is also coordinating with my Southborough to get the information on the blog, and we'll be pushing out information as we get closer to the weekend out on the Twitter account to try and make sure that we get some good participation. So again, thank you to Brian Shea for continuing to help us to try and make this a successful event.
Great. Thank you, Mark. What a great update. And again, thank you to Mr. Shea for continuing to step forward on this and take the lead on this. So that's great. So thank you. Consent agenda. I am going to hold E and then F I will hold for Mr. Healy. Are there any other holds? We'll go through. Andrew, go ahead.
I'd like to hold C.
A and D, please.
Sorry, A and D.
Is there anything that didn't get held?
Marty, would you like to hold B?
Yeah, I was gonna say. No, I think we'll take the $100.
Okay, so that being said, do we have a motion to accept donation of $100 for the fire department ambulance fund?
So move.
Is there a second?
And seconded.
Okay, roll call. Mr. Dennington.
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski.
Aye.
Mr. Stivers.
Aye.
Mr. Healy.
Aye.
Ms. Braccio. Aye. Thank you. And Andrew, you said A?
I said A.
I'm sorry, Sam. Go right ahead.
3 small things on the minutes. Line 233. The name is Christine Demary, Dameri. Line 251, I think it should say Scenic Road Project. And line 347, I think Select Board, 2 words.
Any further edits?
that's it for me.
Okay. Ms. Malinowski, Mr. Dennington, Mr. Healy? All right. That being said, do we have a motion to approve open session meeting minutes, August 17th, 2021, as amended?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call. Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski, and Ms. Brascio. Aye. Thank you very much for that. C. Andrew, sorry.
You're muted, Andrew.
Thank you.
It
Okay.
was very eloquent.
There's two things I noticed. One, the first page of the memos calls for the warrant to be closed. This is for the annual town meeting by December 3rd, but then the second page has the budget calendar calls for the warrant to be closed by December 21st. So, I mean, the two should be the same. I would think it's going to be close the warrant on the later date of the 21st, because if we're going to have a special town meeting in November 1st, it seemed overly ambitious to think that then we would, in just a little under a month, close the warrant for the next town meeting. But the other thing that I noticed and just wanted to highlight was where Brian said in the memo that our ClearGov was not the solution the town was searching for. We're going to be using Excel going forward. So I just had a question about that, because I don't remember whether there's a last budget year or the year before that I thought we made a investment in ClearGov and that it was intended to be something that would generate some efficiencies going forward. So I just wanted to raise for Mark and for the board, are we giving up on ClearGov? Is there something that we could do to try to, I don't know, get some improvements from the vendor to improve the software? I mean, I know that I kind of taught myself how to use it a little bit. Not always the most user-friendly software, but where it was only in place, it's only been in place for a year. And I don't know what term license we got. So I just want to throw those thoughts out there for the board.
So I'm happy to, if we wanted to schedule this discussion, at another meeting, we can absolutely do that. The ClearGov was a community compact initiative that we did. So we didn't pay really any money for the implementation of it. I'd rather not speak too much to some of the deficiencies and some of those things. I think Mr. Ballantyne could probably articulate it a lot better than I could. I think it was for something that was supposed to give us transparency, which I think it did. It didn't give us better functionality. And I really think that's where it suffered. And we had a hard time, it wasn't as easy of a budget season for us for that. And I think that, some other people, were hoping that it would give you more real-time transparency, and so it was not what we hoped for, excuse me, but we didn't have to, it didn't cost us anything to take that demo. But it wasn't something that we saw ourselves moving forward with. There are other potential, things that we can take a look at, and I've asked Brian to start teeing those up for us to review. But for this budget season, there's not enough time to be able to have something else in place. So, are we giving up on ClearGov? Yes. Are we giving up? No. I think that it's the question that we're hoping to get a better answer to is, the answer is still out there. We just need to find it.
So, Mark, I agree that this definitely falls to a discussion. Potentially, Andrew, if you have further questions on another agenda item.
Sure. I mean, we don't have time to get into this fairly arcane topic now, but maybe it's something where just a later meeting with Brian.
Sure.
So yeah.
No, I completely agree. So I'm just looking at it, what the item is listed on the agenda as, and it's for the town meeting budget schedule. So I don't want to veer too far in a discussion off of that path and create an issue. So we'll certainly do that, Andrew. Either we'll see how the 19th pans out as far as a full agenda, or maybe the first agenda in November. but we'll definitely have
Or
that discussion. Go
It
ahead,
could
Mark.
be, Madam Chair, it could be part of, and I don't want to pile this on Ms. Malinowski, but it could be part of the Q1 report in November, when we would have both Mr. Ballantyne and Ms. McAuliffe here as well.
Andrew, does that work for you?
Sure. Thanks.
We love delegating. Ms. Malinowski, would you add that to your list as well? Much appreciated.
I will.
So Andrew, other than the edit to the closing of the warrant, did you have anything else on that item? Okay.
No.
Did any other members of the board have any other questions or concerns on that item?
And we're
Okay.
updating it to the later date, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So that being said, do I have a motion to approve fiscal year 23 budget town meeting schedule as amended?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski,
Aye.
and Ms. Braccio. Aye. All right. That takes us down to D. Mr. Stivers, was
I
that you?
I held D. I just wondered, what are we doing with this? Who are we using for this?
Yeah, I think I had received, well, let me back all the way up. So I think in the discussions with Mead, Talaman and Costa, one of the things that they do not do is they don't do tax title. And, but they do everything else. And so Mr. Ballantyne has been working with Jay to take a look at other tax title attorneys. He's been speaking with, other finance directors, other treasurer collectors, and he had made a recommendation to Jay, and Jay sent me an informal email, and I asked him just to make it a formal memo. I thought that would play better. And I have not, I've gotten a bunch of things from him, but I haven't gotten that yet. So I had hoped to have that in time for tonight. We don't have that. So I think it's probably better if we just table this until the 19th when you have that formal request. So.
Okay, yeah, again, I think it's a good idea. Certainly want to get somebody who's expert and experienced in this. I was just curious as to who it would be. So that sounds fine.
Great.
Okay.
Good hold, Sam. Thank you. Next up, I held E to the accept the resignation of Andrew Pfaff from the Capital Planning Committee effective 9/30/21. I just wanted to take a second and thank Andrew for all of the time and dedication over the last year that he has provided and given to the Capital Planning Committee, and much appreciated. So that being said, do we have a motion to accept the resignation from Andrew Pfaff, Capital Planning Committee effective 9/30/21?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski, and Ms. Braccio. Aye. That brings us to F, and I will throw this to Mr. Healy for the motion.
All right, let me take a deep breath on this one. I'm not going to throw in whereases, so I'll just do it as a prologue. And that is, given that Ms. Braccio and Ms. Malinowski, on behalf of the board, engaged in discussions and negotiations with Mr. Purple regarding a successor 3-year contract for his position as town administrator, that Ms. Braccio and Ms. Malinowski in executive session reported the results of those negotiations along with the proposed contract to the board, that the proposed contract is in the hands of the town's labor council for review, and that upon the Board of Selectmen's vote tonight, the specifics of the contract, the text of the contract, will become part of the public record. With that as prologue, I move that the board approve a 3-year successor contract for Mark Purple as town administrator, subject only to the following: that the review of the town's labor council may have substantive, may have ministerial proposed changes. If the changes are entirely ministerial, the contract is approved as of our vote. If there are any substantive changes, we will revisit them at our October 19th meeting. That's my motion.
Is it 3 years or
Right, yeah.
2.9,
2.8 or whatever?
yeah.
Oh, that's right. Because it's ending in, so with the understanding that while it's begins in October and is a successor contract to a 3-year contract, the term to bring it in line with other salary administration plan and other town official contracts, the end date will be 2.8.
8, yeah.
2.85. Yeah.
2.85 years.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
No,
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Ms. Malinowski,
Aye.
and Ms. Braccio. Aye. Thank you very much.
Hey,
Other
Lisa, can I
matters?
just,
Yes.
and Justin, and maybe this is a question for Mark, not for you. Or maybe Vanessa, whoever, I don't know if you have a contract, but the text of the contract will be up on the town's website as of tomorrow.
Once it's signed, I believe Mark said.
Once it's signed, and obviously once council's reviewed it, once it's been signed, it'll be posted up on the website on the Selectmen's page.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Other matters before the board. Item A, approval for one-day alcohol license applications for Chestnut Hill Farm, Fall Fun on the Farm events, October 10th, October 17th, October 24th, and October 31st. The board has had discussions on these. Can we bring over, I see DA Hayden there. And Mark, do you see, was there another person?
Yes, Rob Warren.
Rob Warren, okay. All right, as we bring them over, so there was concern expressed, and I guess Marty, I'll just let you jump into this, Marty, if you want, and I guess that's probably the easiest way.
Sure. Hey, Donna, how are you?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having us.
Good evening.
So the concerns are the same that led to there were requests last year for similar licenses, and they were voted down because of inconsistency between the proposals and both the conservation restriction and the management plan. I appreciate the additional written materials that were submitted, and it's interesting, our town council used the word ancillary. My view is that the educational items that are identified in the memo we received are actually ancillary to the event. And it just strikes me, if you, again, the terms of the conservation restriction and the terms of the management plan are for educational items, and even your flyer sort of underscores that this is not an educational event. In some respects, it's a commercial event. It's a moneymaker. That being said, the conservation restriction and the management plan seem to vest entirely in the trustees the designation of what is educational. I was not on the board. I'm not sure if anybody was on the board when those documents were discussed and approved. I would recommend to everyone involved that those documents be significantly improved. And I would tell you that I think your arguments for these being educational items would be much stronger if the town, and for purposes of the conservation restriction and the case management plan, it would be in the persons of the Conservation Commission. That's the way it's structured. We're a party to the determination that these are educational. You haven't convinced me that they are. Took a good shot, interesting memo, good spin. But again, borrowing a word from Mr. Tallerman, at best, the educational items that are identified are ancillary to the real purpose of the days. Now, that being said, again, you all get to decide and to designate something as educational. You haven't convinced me that they are, but again, I think it's some real missing provisions in both the conservation restriction and the management agreement that's left wide open. That being said, we do have we being the Board of Selectmen determination of whether or not to approve alcohol licenses, and that is a bridge too far times 5 for me in terms of tying it to an educational designation under either the conservation restriction or the management plan. And again, the attorney did a good job putting together as good an argument as I think you can. I'd point out that I think all of the farms that were identified as having events like this were farms that don't have conservation restrictions on them. I think they're maybe all owned by the trustees, but I didn't see anything in the memo, and I did some quick research myself to see if I could find conservation restrictions for any of those properties, and I did not. So, I mean, in some respects, we're being asked to go out on an island to have alcohol licenses tied to an educational function that for the most part targets children. And as I said, that's very much a bridge too far for me.
Great. Thank you, Marty. Ms. Hayden, do you want to offer anything to that?
Well, I think that we respectfully disagree with Selectman Healy's position. We do believe these are educational programs. Rob, perhaps you could answer the question about conservation restrictions.
Yeah, we do have restrictions in some other places. Every conservation restriction that I've seen, has its own unique character. This one is different from, I can't really point at a parallel conservation restriction. We are not the holder of this restriction. The town is, of course. We own the land subject to that restriction. We do hold over 300 conservation restrictions around the state. I can't point you to a parallel one exactly. This was, I think, clearly, we were not the owners at the time it was created. It was between the Beals family and the town. I think, again, respectfully disagree that among the goals was to engage the public on the farm. I think that's part of what the Beals family sought. Once the conservation restriction was on the land, they engaged in a public RFP process to find a nonprofit to convey the land itself to. And, part of our proposal was that we would engage the public around the farm. And that's part of what excited them about us as the next owner. So again, we do see that differently. My family has a long history in experiential education. I think it's a very real thing, and that real education does happen at these events. So again, respectfully disagree with some of those observations, but I think that we also certainly agree that the board has authority to make the alcohol license decisions. We do ask that, in the spirit of this event, which is part of a long tradition of farm harvest festivals in New England, dating back before the existence of nonprofits, that, having a beer at a farm event, a farm festival, while you're learning things is not mutually exclusive, and is, something that the people of Southborough and other towns who have attended our events enjoy and, find adds to the experience.
I would also add that having attended these events now at all of the farms within the trustees, and certainly at the farms that I personally am responsible for with our team in the Charles River Valley, that the comments from those who attend these events are really very special. And people talk to me directly, and they talk to our team directly about the fact that their children are experiencing things on these farms that they have not experienced before. And adults talk about that as well. I think that Ms. Carter made reference to that in several points within her letter, where when someone begins to understand where their food comes from, that's an educational experience. When someone learns about the history of a property and the importance of keeping space open, that's an educational experience that children carry with them for a long time, and that families carry with them, and they come back and they help us and they volunteer and they want to be more engaged with the trustees. And they also have an enhanced understanding of the importance of keeping space open for the public and for enjoyment. I am very clear on the fact that you all are the deciders of a beverage alcohol license, but I'm also very clear on the fact that we are delivering experiential education in a very genuine and a very authentic fashion at all of our farms, and Chestnut Hill Farm is one of those. And we're proud of the work that we do there. We're happy to have children and families there to experience what that farm is all about. And having an alcoholic beverage while your child is learning, or after you've been on a hay ride, or you've done a scavenger hunt where you're discovering things about the farm, we believe that that's part of the gathering experience, and that this is something that is worthwhile, and that the community, not just the Southborough community, but as an inclusive organization for communities in the area, that they would enjoy at Chestnut Hill Farm. So that's why we're coming back to you again with this request, and hope that you would honor it.
Thank you. Marty, do you want to add anything further before I open it up to the board?
I don't. I think in some respects, Ms. Hayden and Mr. Warren actually made my point, which was focusing on the educational aspect of it. I again, you all get to decide what that is. I think you should do it differently, but I understand that the way the conservation restriction and the way the land management plan works, that determination rests entirely with you. You can call it educational, whatever you want. I'm not arguing with that. My point is that the same language that gives you all that authority to say this is an educational function, in no way, shape, or form invites the use of that land. It was, again, I was there for all of the process that went for the town, paying an awful lot of money for that, for the conservation restriction on that land. And the idea of it being used as a commercial exercise, which in my mind, this is, once you start selling alcoholic beverages, just wasn't part of it. And everything you said about the educational opportunities that you're providing, have at it. That's completely unconnected to, oh, and we have to have a beer too. It is, as I said, it's a bridge too far. I don't see it anywhere in the language of any of the legal documents here. And I don't think we should be extending that when it's not something the town approved. So,
thank you, Marty. Appreciate it. Ms. Malinowski.
Thank you. I also agree that I don't think we need that serving alcohol at an hour and a half, Discovery Kids event is a necessity. I think, I can see from the memo, the point on the educational things, related to what's under the conservation restriction. I do see that perspective. I think a little bit differently than Marty, but I'm not comfortable agreeing to an alcohol license for this type of event under that conservation restriction.
Thank you. Mr. Stivers.
Thank you. I think Marty makes some good points, certainly. And I do think that it's possible to attract the public without serving alcohol. On the other hand, I guess I'm interested and willing to give the trustees a little slack on this one. I think that Marty's point about having more clarity about how we think about this and how we qualify things as educational or not would be very helpful. My bottom line is I'm prepared to approve this this time and hope that over the succeeding months, we can figure out a way to better clarify what qualifies as education and or what doesn't, and see what happens down the road. So I'm prepared to support it at this point, but without the assurance that I will do it again in the future. So that's sort of where I stand on this.
Thank you, Mr. Stivers. Mr. Dennington.
Like Mr. Stivers, I am prepared to support the applications. I don't think that the event is inconsistent with the purpose of the conservation restriction. The alcohol license is, part of, I think, the hospitality around the event. I don't see that there's any great, harm caused by this. And I know I was not part of the discussion that the board had last year, but my position is pretty much the same as Sam's, and I would vote to support it.
Thank you, Andrew. So I share the same concerns we shared a year ago, that where this fits in to the CR and the educational piece. And, we've talked about the public enjoying the farm, but are we, from my perspective, are we saying that alcohol has to be involved for the families to go and enjoy the farm and everything that goes along with it? I think there's definitely some gray area in this. I am not convinced that this was the intent or even where it falls within the CR. So I also agree with Mr. Healy that at this time, I'm not willing to support the alcohol for the event. And again, as Ms. Malinowski also said, it's an 1.5-hour event with kids. And again, it's something that I think needs to be worked out through the management plan and whatnot. But I think there's question on whether this falls within the four corners of what's allowed. So I would not support this. So that being said, I guess we will ask for a motion.
I will give the prologue that I'll make the motion, but I'm voting against it.
I know.
But I'll move that we approve 4 one-day alcohol license applications for Chestnut Hill Farm, Fall Fun on the Farm events, October 10, 17, 24, and 31.
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call. Mr. Dennington. Mr. Stivers.
Aye.
Mr. Healy.
No.
Ms. Malinowski.
No.
And Ms. Braccio, no. So 3-2, the alcohol licenses are not approved. Thank you for coming. Thank you for having this discussion. And, I think it's a larger discussion that needs to take place, as Mr. Healy alluded to. So thank you very much. Next up, November 1st, 2021 special town meeting. If we could bring Mr. Hagerty over. We can talk about meeting logistics. I know he was out there. Andrew, go ahead.
Since now we've been at this now for 2.5 hours, is there okay if we take like a 1 or 2 minute break?
Okay, absolutely. Let's take a 5-minute recess. We'll come back at 8:30. It's 8:24 now. 8:30.
Thank you. Hi, Jim.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
How come you're not at the Red Sox game tonight, Jim? Come on. Remote connection.
I heard that Bucky Denton was going to be in attendance.
Fantastic.
He was also at attendance at Game 7 of the 2004 ALCS, and that one worked out okay, too. He read Dan Shaughnessy's column today.
All right, the board is back at 8:29. Mr. Haggerty, welcome. Thank you for all that you've done to move everything forward. If you'd like to give us kind of an update on the logistics for what you anticipate for town meeting.
Thank you. The meeting will be held in the gymnasium at the front of your school. The residents will enter through the parking lot the same way they would if they were going to participate in voting. The check-in will be in that lobby instead of in the gym itself. By meeting in the gymnasium, we're able to comply with the Board of Health directive that we have at least 6 feet separation horizontally and vertically for.
Hey, Jim, this is Marty. I don't know if I'm the only one. I'm having trouble hearing you. I feel it sounds muffled to me. Am I the only one? Is it my speakers?
Can anybody hear me okay?
I think it's his microphone. It's muffled indeed. I can hear it, but it's still somewhat muffled.
It's hard to hear.
How about now?
The same.
Let me go to plan B. Can you hear me now?
It's better.
Not much better, but better.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let me try plan C. How about that? How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, terrific. Excellent. The meeting will be held in the gymnasium of the front of your school, and residents will enter from the parking lot by the track, just the same way they enter when they're going to vote in person. One difference is they'll check-in will be in a lobby rather than in the gym itself. This allows us to comply with the Board of Health directive that we have at least 6 foot separation horizontally and vertically for all seating. In addition, we will have air movers installed at the 2 doors at the rear of the gym, which will increase substantially the flow of air through the room. So pulling air out of the room, not pushing it across people. That's what we did elections as well. Masks will be mandatory for all residents. If residents don't have a mask, we will provide them to them. We will have overflow capacity to go to the auditorium. We could have 141 people safely sit in the gymnasium, and we can have roughly another 100 in the auditorium working with the COVID spacing. Pre-COVID, we could fit the fire capacity for the auditorium is 505, not including the selectmen and the advisory tables up front. But with COVID, you're talking just about 100. So it substantially reduces it. By the time you separate every aisle, actually every row, and then 2 of them, 3 seats going across. So it really reduces it dramatically. We've working with the Board of Health and SEMA to have a rapid COVID testing option available to people. This will be take place out of the parking lot at the entrance, the parking lot entrance, the courtyard going to the gym. Specifics on how that'll work out and all the rest of the stuff we'll have posted next week and writing up on the website. I don't want to get into more details now because sometimes people only get parts of the message. So we'll have, once everything is run with the Board of Health, meeting with the Board of Health nurse on Thursday and with SEMA, we'll have all the logistics up there for everybody. In terms of publications, we'll have banners posted next week as soon as you sign the warrant. The banners are at the vendor right now, just waiting the okay for that to go out. So he'll start printing them tomorrow, and I'll have them posted maybe later this week. I plan on sending postcards, oversized postcards. These will be 5x7 or 5x9 to every household in Southborough, and those should arrive by October the 23rd. They'll advertise the town meeting, and they'll have a QR code link to the warrant as well. I need to follow up with the schools to see if the option to use their electronic book pack to send information on this home to the voters as well. That's one thing I don't know the answer to. And again, I want to say how fortunately the schools in Southborough are just superb to work with. Everything's been very, we're in good shape. I will say this, I know some people are concerned about safety issues in COVID. I take it very seriously. One of my children had COVID, one of my good friends died of COVID. I would not be participating in this if I didn't think it was safe. That's just me personally. And those of you who know me, I'm someone who wears a mask all the time. I wear it here, I wear it outside. We take it very seriously. I think that we can do this in a safe way. We'll be using the same vendor that produced the outdoor town meeting stuff. If there is an overflow to the auditorium, the people that are in the auditorium will have the same ability to participate. They'll hear what's going on in the gym and so forth. So that's pretty much about it. It'll be a little bit different, but it'll be spaced out well, and I think it'll work very well. We'll have plenty of police on scene to direct people. You know, we're going to ensure that nobody inadvertently parks in front of the school thinking they can enter through to the auditorium. We don't want people walking too far, so you know we'll have everyone directed to park in the shortest way off the side. I'm confident we can do this safely, and I think we'll work out well. Do you have any questions for me?
Great, Jim. Thank you very much, and thank you for always trying to think of everything, you know, when we do these. So I do just have one question for you. So you said that if overflow goes to the auditorium, then people will have the same ability to participate. Now that's just via no visual, just audio, correct?
Right. The moderator is not going to have a projection screen for presenting articles as we've had sometimes in the past. So there'll be no video presentations or anything like this. There will be a camera in the auditorium facing the microphones to allow the moderator to see if anybody is at the microphones. And there'll be a deputy moderator assigned to that room as well. The microphone will be numbered with a placket up top. The moderator will have a large television monitor at his feet, so the moderator can see who's at all the different stations to ensure that everybody has an equal opportunity to participate, ask questions, amendments, motions, things like that.
All right, great. Thank you, Jim. We'll go around the table. Mr. Healy?
All right, since I got earphones, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so the microphone. All right, technology. Jim, you may have addressed this, but we've got the, what was the number, 138 or so in the gymnasium?
141 in the gym and another 100 in the auditorium.
All right. What happens, and maybe this is a question for you and Mr. Semino jointly, what happens if 260 people show up?
Marty, you've known me long enough. I always keep plan B in my pocket. We have a plan B. We will be able to address an overflow.
Okay. All right. You don't want to share it with us now, but you're still working on it?
No, I've worked out with the schools, the facilities, they're on board with it. I just have to be very respectful of the fact that we are, I look at the difficulties the schools have with all of their daily activities in school and us disrupting their activities. So as to exactly how we pull that off, I want to be respectful of them. We will have an ability to address all of that. We'll be good on it.
Okay, I trust you. All right, thanks. That's all for me.
All right, Mr. Stivers.
Sounds as usual like you've thought of a lot of things in advance here, so I have great confidence it will happen successfully. No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stivers. Mr. Dennington.
Hi, Jim. Pardon me if you addressed this before, but for people that are coming to the microphone to speak, will they have to wear the mask while they speak?
Yes. For the Board of Health, everybody who's in will have to wear a mask at all times, and they will be able to wear it at the microphone. These microphones have the company has an ability remotely to adjust the gain on the microphones so that we will be able to hear the people clearly. If somebody is speaking softly, we'll be fine on that. I'm confident we'll be okay.
Okay. Thank you for answering my question.
Ms. Malinowski.
Thank you, Jim. So you mentioned that the gymnasium and the auditorium will have the same audio capability. Is there going to be a screen in the gym but not in the auditorium?
No, there will not be a screen in either one. And one of the things that I went back and forth on is to whether if we're not going to have presentations. And one of the problems you have is the auditorium is, excuse me, the gymnasium is 90 feet deep by 120 feet wide. So logistically, to try to get enormous screen monitors in to look at this is very expensive. And realistically, once you get 6 or 7 rows away from the front screen, no one's going to be able to read the fine print of adjustments and warrants and such like that. So the only advantage of keeping monitors up front is a screen up front was that somebody could see the face of somebody in the auditorium. And I looked at that and I said, the cost to do that is almost $1,000. And I'm trying to be respectful of the taxpayers' money. I just don't think that that's worth $1,000. It's not a requirement. So I don't want to spend the money.
Okay, I think I'm just thinking about the potential map change for the downtown district and how that will be displayed appropriately, I guess, on a piece of paper for the town meeting attendees to see. So we just need to think about that if we're not going to be able to put it up on the screen.
And we will have tables in the lobby for any handouts, and we can I'll have lots of helping hands to help us address all these issues. But again, when you think of if you look at the size of that screen that we had in the auditorium, and then you drop that to roughly a third of that, and you have the same distance, to somebody sitting in the back, it doesn't translate. People wouldn't be able to see the detail on the screen up front. We did look into that, but it's not really. And we even looked at adding additional monitors along the side, but then for safety issues, when you add all those monitors, you lose substantial seating along the sides as well. So you can kind of a catch-22.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Jim, thank you. Mr. Purple, do you want to add anything to this update or discussion?
No, I had a nice walkthrough with Mr. Hegarty and Mr. Semino today, and I concur with the board that the Jim's pretty much got this locked down, and I think it's going to be a good setting where we can get our business done, and also respect the health and safety of the town officials and the residents who participate.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hegarty, thank you, as always, for doing everything you do as well as you do and making it easy on the rest of us. So much appreciated.
Look forward to the meeting.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is Downtown District Bylaw. So this stemmed from our last meeting. Ms. Malinowski had a specific question that she asked. The EDC was invited to come, I know, this afternoon, mid-afternoon, maybe a little bit later this afternoon. We did receive some slides from EDC, but a lot of the content in those slides was information that, the purpose of the bylaw and things that we've been going over for the last year. It's been in promotional information. So I think to move this forward, I don't have any intention of allowing and rehashing some of the discussions that we've already had as far as purpose and whatnot. So I thought, Ms. Malinowski, well, you were the one that had initially, brought your concern and your questions forward, that I would allow you to ask the question. We'll bring the EDC over. They can call their meeting to order and hopefully be able to answer the questions that you had.
Okay, thank you.
That being said, Ms. Hale, can we bring Mr. Berger, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Belniak, Mr. Wood, and Ms. Conley? And if I've missed anybody from the EDC committee,
Ms. Munsif, maybe?
Okay, so I assume Mr. Belniak, actually, I apologize, Mr. Anderson, you are here. So we currently have from your committee, let's see, we have Ms. Conley, we just need Mr. Wood. So Mr. Anderson, if you'd like to call your meeting to order.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to call the Southborough Economic Development Committee meeting to order on Tuesday, October 5th at about 8:45. I'm going to do a roll call vote of those members that are joining us today. I'm going to go in the order in which I see them. Julie Connolly.
Here.
Alan Belniak.
Here.
Matt Berger.
Here.
John Wood.
Here.
And so Rob Anderson here as well. So we do have a quorum of the EDC and stand ready to answer any questions that come up.
Great, thank you. So Ms. Malinowski, I will defer to you for what you were looking for.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you to the EDC for coming tonight. I did have a chance to watch your meeting this morning, so I do appreciate that you took a position. That was one of my questions is, have you taken a position? I just hadn't seen one. And so I appreciate you clarifying that. One of my questions is, you want, in your motion, you wanted to take out the 40%. But in the draft prior to this, it did say 10%, and you had suggested striking that for the residency component. So I was just wondering if you wanted it out completely, or if you were suggesting to replace the 40% with a different percentage.
I'll take this one. Thank you, Ms. Malinowski, and thank you to the board for seeing us on this issue again. I know we've had lots of discussions, and of course, we're happy to answer your questions. So I think the 10%, to answer Chelsea's question, I think the 10%, it was intended to make sure that I think, first of all, there was a typo because it was originally intended to discuss the issue of how much percentage of the first floor of any mixed use building should be non-residential space. And there were lots of discussions around it. And then I think that the 10% number just confused matters. And we wanted to make sure there was at least some non-residential space on the first floor. But I think we intended it to be like the reverse, but there was some confusion, but we took it, we thought to not have a number, however, to make sure that all street facing first floor units were commercial, because that's the point of mixed use, that we want to encourage these, commercial type spaces. Prior to that, had nothing to do with the total percentage of residential units that would be in an entire building. So that concept of adding in that not more than 40% of an entire building could be residential, that's a brand new concept that we had not discussed prior to that addition that the planning board made a couple of weeks ago. To me, I have to say that, when we first came to the planning board more than 2 years ago, before we got really involved with this process, we came with a very simple ask, and we came with the ask, could we please add by right mixed use to have residential be allowed over commercial space, because that's, was contemplated in the 2008 master plan. That was one of the primary recommendations of our ULI study. It was also corroborated in many other reports through SHOPC and other reports that have been done for the town over the course of the past more than decade. So that was our initial simple request. And they said, and we literally brought one line to try to add to the existing zoning code, because mixed use has currently a very antiquated definition that does not include any residential component. I always use this example. So sorry if you've all heard it before, but the current zoning code actually allows you to have your night watchman mix use with your printing press, but it does not allow a, coffee shop with a residential unit on top. So the concept of having some sort of percentage of that's a capped percentage of a building that could be used for residential really sort of undermines the whole intent of having mixed use, because if our code allows, I think it currently allows for, and will continue to allow for, up to a 3-story building. But even if you were to put in a 2-story building with commercial space on the bottom and residential on the top, that's going to be more than 40%, which wouldn't be permitted. So that really undermines the entire premise of why we came here in the first place. To answer the second part of your question, if the Board of Selectmen and if the Planning Board are interested in having some, I'd like to understand why, first of all, that was added. It wasn't very thoroughly discussed at any of the subsequent meetings by the Planning Board or by this board. So I'd like to understand more where that came from, why people think it's important. And again, I'm not saying there doesn't need to be a number in there. I'm just trying to understand what the benefit of adding any number in there would be. And if there is some benefit, what that number is, because the 40% literally undoes sort of why we came forward with this whole proposal.
So Julie, let me ask you, Chelsea, if you don't mind, let me piggyback a question on that. So you said that there wasn't a discussion on this after the changes were made with the subsequent planning board meeting. There's only been the one meeting with planning board since the changes. Well, when they received EDC's letter, the public hearings were still open. But let me just ask you this. So what is a number you're looking at? I understand where the 60-40, and that's just me. And again, I'm one of 5 members on this board. I understand where the 60-40 came from, that this is supposed to be a mixed use. If you look at a 3-story building, a 50% number doesn't work either. If there's concern of mixing residential and possible commercial or office space, it's going to happen on a 3-story building anyway. So again, this was not proposed. This was proposed to be able to revitalize our downtown. And I don't know where the line blurred to some level at revitalizing the downtown. And the only way to do that is to have a substantial number of apartments. So I guess we kind of differ on our thought process a little bit on that. I don't know specifically what the right number is, but when I look at the bylaw as a whole, and I look at what was trying to be accomplished versus what we're allowed to do currently. And currently there is no mixed use. Currently there is no by right. And to not find some form of consensus on this and go to town meeting only creates the opportunity for waiting 3 years before anything else can possibly come forward and benefit the downtown. And I think Sam and Andrew have said it at prior meetings, is this maybe specifically what they were looking for, and maybe not, but it's a great starting point. And this is actually, I think for the residents of Southborough, I believe this is a big change. This is a big change to what currently is taking place. It's allowing uses that are not allowed in our downtown whatsoever. So again, I only speak as one member of the board, and I know that there was concern through the public hearing process. And again, those hearings took place in the spring and they took place again this summer into the fall. And there was concerns about this becoming just a housing bylaw, and trying to find the balance in that. I don't know, Julie, where the balance is. I don't know that 50% does it, because I think on a 3-story building, you're still going to have some mixing of uses. So that's just my thoughts on this. I know Mimi Luttrell is also a participant. I don't know if she would be interested in coming over. And again, she could only speak as one member of planning board, but I would be interested if Mimi, if you're interested, if you could raise your hand, if you're interested in coming over. If not, I totally understand that, oh, she did. Okay. If we could bring Mimi over. And again, I hesitate, Julie, with after, like you said, 2 years of trying to move something forward and finding what works. And I think from an economic development standpoint, the key is bringing businesses. It's been pitched as bringing, small scale mixed use to the downtown. People want a bakery, people want a microbrewery, people want whatever, a place to gather. And I think by not finding a way to make this work, that's just not going to happen in the downtown. And I worry if we wait 3 years, it's going to delay it and it's never going to come back. This is going to follow the path that the ZAC took after so much time and so much effort. So again, just my opinion. Mimi, do you have anything that you may want to address or say regarding the 60-40%?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My understanding of the thought behind the 60-40 is that the minimum requirement of 10% commercial would allow a building which is 90% residential. And residential is much, much easier to do. So you would get 10% commercial and 90% residential, more than likely. It was my understanding that the reason for the mixed use was to bring small scale commercial development to the downtown. And when there's such a heavy emphasis on residential, you're not going to get that small scale commercial development.
Bylaw. There's no 90%. That wasn't what was intended.
Excuse me, Julie, I was speaking. A 10% minimum of commercial opens up. You would meet the by right requirements of the bylaw if you had 10% commercial and 90% residential. And in other towns, that has been an issue. They've had buildings with an ATM and then all residential. So I think the 60-40, if it's supposed to be a bylaw to encourage commercial development, you should zone for what you're trying to encourage, then there should be a skew towards commercial and not residential.
Thank you, Mimi. Mr. Healy.
I guess two things. Number one is just the logistics of this. My vote at our last meeting about the demolition bylaw was, I think I've made it pretty clear the last couple of meetings, was I think it's important to make it part of the warrant for the special town meeting. And I can count votes, and at least for purposes of the last couple of meetings, there was not going to be a consensus right now. That could change on the Board of Selectmen to change the recommendation that came from the Planning Board. I guess a couple of things from a logistics standpoint. That doesn't mean it can't change at town meeting. I will tell you, since the vote by the Planning Board, and since I got back into town, and I've actually had my computer and everything like that able to be researched, I guess a couple of things have struck me. And I have no idea, but this is why I think it's important to have it on the warrant and to have this played out at town meeting, because I actually think this is an incredibly important decision for Southborough. And Lisa, you're nodding, but now I think you're gonna maybe shake your head this way. It was interesting, the timing. The Boston Globe, or Boston.com, I know they're related, had published a study by the Boston Foundation's research group. It was just in on Monday or Tuesday of this week. And an awful lot of the explanations by the Planning Board for the changes they made are explicitly, those sort of explanations are explicitly criticized in the Boston Foundation's study. And basically, the reasons they're criticized is because these are explanations, rationales, et cetera, that are routinely and continually offered by suburban communities to keep out downtown residential development. I agree with Ms. Connolly. I thought that was one of the rationales, one of the main rationales for this whole initiative. I hear, on the one hand, maybe you're dwelling on 10%. Julie's saying we don't like 40%. There's 30 numbers in between that. I suspect Ms. Connolly would be very comfortable with 20 or 25%, and she's nodding her head. And I think that's the discussion she's disappointed that was not had at the planning board. Discussion also that was not had at the planning board is exactly what I just laid out. And that is the rationales that were specifically, explicitly stated by the planning board are the rationales that are always used to keep out exactly what our master plans forever have said we as a town want to do. And again, what I said at one of the last meetings is, we've been very good at talking the talk about wanting diversity, about wanting inclusion, about wanting equity, about bringing different forms of housing. That doesn't mean just out on Route 9, stuck in a corner. It means focusing on our downtown. And as I said, I encourage everybody to read the study that just came out by the Boston Foundation, because that's why I think, though, it's important for this to be on the special town meeting warrant. I think Southborough has to make a decision. Do we walk the walk, or do we just talk the talk? And I think if we end up adopting a provision with, limiting the number of residential units, putting a cap on them with which strikes me as a very arbitrary number, 40%, that's going to say something very unfortunate, in my view, about the town of Southborough and its commitment to what it says it's committed to. The notion of diversity, inclusion, and equity of housing. Again, read the study. These are not my arguments. I'm very good at presenting them, but they were presented by the Boston Foundation that looked at all of the towns around the Boston metropolitan area and found them wanting for exactly these types of reasons. So I think it's important that it be on the special town meeting warrant. I also encourage the EDC to make your arguments about why the changes by the planning board are contrary to what should be going. Basically, they're on the wrong side of history. The direction we should be going with our development. Anyway, it was longer than I intended to, but I think it's really important for the town of Southborough to put up or shut up about this sort of stuff. And special town meeting will give us that opportunity.
I agree with you on that, Marty, and I agree change is needed. But from a zoning perspective and what Zach had took place with Zach, these are big changes. And I know the board realizes this. These are big changes we're putting into place to our current zoning. We're offering half the lot size. It'll bring some into conformity. You're offering a mixed use that is currently not available in the downtown. You're offering by right, which is not available in the downtown whatsoever. And through, again, this is something I planned on showing the board later, with some of the discussion points that I wanted to bring up when we talk to advisory. And again, I'm happy to bring up these points here. John, I see you. Just 2 seconds, please. I see these points here. But I want, one of the main things I think we need to think about in our downtown is, yes, there needs to be change. But I think we need to realize that out of the 22 lots in the downtown district, I believe, and actually, Vanessa, can I please share the screen? Have access. Thank you. So can everyone see? Let me see if I can make this bigger. The graphic that I've put up. I think some things we need to really focus on as we're looking at what we want to do in the downtown is out of the 22 lots, 11 of these lots are historic, which I think says a lot when we're looking at what could be or what couldn't be downtown. And I think from my perspective, and again, I'm one of 5, the guardrails need to be in place that somebody just doesn't buy up some of these lots, tear them down and put in something that is losing the heritage. And we've all talked about the historic downtown and how important it is. So I think guardrails need to be in place for that. Also, if you look at the FARs that are listed here currently, 11 of them are below the 0.30 that's being proposed. Does that mean that specifically there's change? I know that EDC had sent a sheet over earlier today that showed 11 Main Street at a 0.32. I verified with the town clerk, the 21,000 square feet that they mentioned did not include the basement, which is being built. So 11 Main Street right now is at a 0.42 FAR. And if you look at the lot at 11 Main Street, you see how much is pavement. And I think that's another thing that this board needs to consider when you're talking about what to allow downtown as well. Let me see if I can just move this down. So there's been a lot of talk and about using, specific lots, because we didn't want this to be about specific lots. But I'm going to, because, we've talked a lot about 2 East Main Street. This was what was proposed on 2 East Main Street at a 0.328 FAR. If you look at the amount of parking that's required, now you look at the 20% of open space, the size of that building couldn't have changed a whole lot from what it was. In order to get the 23 spots needed for parking, the initial proposal came down by 500 square feet, and it was used as storage space in the attic. And I think another thing that we haven't really talked about, hold on 2 seconds, sorry, is the definition of when we're talking about what a gross floor area means. And it's exclusive of elevators, stairwells, garages, basements, and other areas used for storage. So when we're looking at a size of a building potentially, and I'll go back to this, at a 40 by 75 foot building, you're looking at roughly 3,000 square feet per floor. Obviously, the top floor was a little bit different. They went with a 560 based on the number of parking spots. As I went through, and I am not a mathematician by any means, as I went through and was doing some general calculations as to what could be done and how we could do something, adding the residential component, and even at a 40%, I came up with roughly different numbers, but I came down to it 16 parking spots. Currently, what the zoning calls for would be 23 on a 6,500 square foot use. And we have to remember the building size is different than the building use size. So again, I think it's very telling when you're looking at what we're looking to do. And this was based on fire apparatus turning plan and with the 23 parking spots. I will add, this was one of what was being proposed. It's a beautiful building. There's no question about it. When it went down to 6,500 feet, this was still what was being proposed. The differences in the building had to do with the attic space. And you can see here, this is the 3rd floor, only 560 square feet of the 3rd floor was going to be used for this building based on the number of parking spaces required. So by changing the code, which we are looking to do, you're also changing the number of parking spots required. I'm sorry, let me just go back to this. So for instance, in doing the calculations, the current zoning for an eating establishment per se requires 1 parking spot per 3 seats and 1 for an employee. What's currently being proposed will require 1 for every 4 seats. We've been talking a lot about what the taxpayers of this town on surveys and whatnot have talked about. They want small scale eateries, small scale microbreweries potentially. Parking becomes a serious calculation when you're looking at this. Also, for an office space, currently it's 3.5 spaces per 1,000 feet. That's why we came up with the 23. The proposed is 1 space per 300 square feet, and this is for offices specifically, for ground floor offices, and 1 space per 350 feet for above the first floor. So I think we're creating opportunity here, but I think when we talk about the size of a building and what can be allowed on 1, 2, or 3 stories, we need to also take a look at what is actually allowed. This was a 0.328. And I had said this at a prior meeting. I thought the number was 33. But when I dug back through to find out where I got that number from, I think it's important for the board and the public to realize it's more than just a building. And if you look at what the requirement is for parking, it has a significant impact on what can be built. I call that a guardrail, if you will, on being able to do what the board wants. So I think we need to pay, again, very close attention to the historicness of our downtown and what can and can't be done. And four of the 22 lots are vacant. 1 is a parking lot for the bank downtown. So in looking at these numbers, again, there's additional opportunities here by allowing mixed use development. And again, what that number is, I don't know, but I think something is better than nothing. And I'll open it up to the board. And again, Marty, I'm not looking to sway you or change you. I just want to put additional facts out there that as we're looking at the downtown, what the general scope is of what's currently down there.
And Lisa, I'll just jump in. I hear you, and I agree with an awful lot of what you said. Again, I just think that we as a town are kidding ourselves if we're using preservation and traffic concerns and unusual algorithms to keep out housing. We're just kidding ourselves about what really is going on.
And if I might, as
sure.
we do have the EDC here, and I'm very glad that you have this particular screen up, because in the far left-hand column is year built.
Correct.
And there is nothing that I see there after 1978. So if we want change, and we do, because we want to energize and help support some of those businesses there, there is change that this zoning can enact that can actually help us get there. And as chair of the EDC, I have one of my members with his hand raised. I'm going to recognize John Wood.
I was going there, Rob. Thank you.
No, I just.
I just wanted to.
He looks so much like Euclid that I'm almost confused a little bit.
We were up 2 last I checked, but I just wanted to clarify before when Ms. Luttrell was talking, she was saying that it was a 10%. That was a typo that I know we had been talking about trying to get changed. If you're talking about the 10% on the first floor, that needed to be, that was supposed to be a maximum of 10%. Then that was to make it ADA compliant, if I remember, if memory serves, on the first floor. It was a typo that I know we tried getting changed a while back, as well as when the misconception of the 80% was out there. And I know that started a lot of problems with people, but I just wanted to make sure we didn't want 10% to be commercial and 90% residential. That was never, ever, ever, to go back through any of the meetings, an intent. I know on the first floor that we had talked about 10% on the first floor to make ADA compliant, just in case we needed a handicap department or something, because I know initially that we were trying to get housing. So I just wanted to bring that up, that was a typo. I know that I had brought up in a few meetings in the past to try to get corrected, and never was. So I know that's, so I mean, 40% in my personal opinion, that doesn't even allow a full second floor to be residential. I mean, 50% makes sense, but 40 just didn't. So but if you're looking at us thinking that we wanted 90% residential, yeah, so I would have definitely gone the same way, but that wasn't the case at all. So I just wanted to make sure that was on record. So Thank you for recognizing me. Thank you for having us tonight, by the way.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. And again, I think our goal is to be able to do something to benefit the downtown, to revitalize the downtown, to bring businesses to downtown. I don't think there's any of us that are on a different page than that. It's how we get there and be cognizant of what we have in our downtown and how to promote that more. I mean, with again, I'll go back to the historic parcels that are listed here. You know, with our demolition delay bylaw, it would take someone to buy a lot and it could easily, very easily change. And I think we need to be cognizant of that. I know it's important. We talk, go ahead, Julie.
Sorry, no, finish your thought. I don't want to interrupt.
No, that's okay. I got a ton of thoughts, so go ahead. We all do.
Yes, thank you for clearing that up, John. Absolutely, you know, bringing in businesses is you know, that's why we came here. That's why we're doing this work. I agree that, you know, I also want to clarify that we're absolutely willing to compromise. I don't know what the right number is. To me, 40% just doesn't allow for the mixed use. And let me explain why mixed use is important. I think it's important for several different reasons. One, that's sort of the modern economic development that's being promoted at every level of government. From, you know, there's a state economic development office that we've worked with in the past. They're promoting that as well. It's sustainable. It's sort of the mode of the future. People want to have communities where that are walkable, that are bikeable, where they can go downstairs from their apartment and they can, you know, go grab a coffee or whatever. Also, you know, it's very expensive to do construction right now. So to encourage and foster somebody to come in and put forth a project, having an opportunity to have a few residential units over commercial units makes a project economically viable and can help bring on that kind of investment that we're looking for. I absolutely take your point about historical, and you know, I think we spent a lot of time addressing that in the design guidelines. That was one of the reasons why we wanted to put forth the design guidelines, is to make sure that certain preservations, including historical, were addressed. That's why we included Mr. Weishawn on that committee, because that's important to us. And you know, I think we're all on the same page as that. So, you know, the other thing that I wanted to point out in that chart that Ms. Braccio put forward, you know, you did show that many of the buildings, I think about half of them were under the 0.30 FAR, but also many of them are over. And if we're saying we're trying to spur development that's in line with what we have now, many of the buildings have a much higher FAR than the 0.30. I also noticed that 0.30 is the FAR for Res B. If we're looking to make a downtown district that's distinctive, that's different, that if we're putting zoning in that's different from the rest of from other zoning districts, because we're trying to spur this development, having something larger than what is allowed in Res B certainly makes sense to me. So I know that's a different issue that wasn't you know, that we weren't talking about, but you know, these 2 points together are really the crux of what I think we were going for. And Mr. Healy, thank you for that, pointing out that article. I agree, you know, this has also been part of the discussion, and we don't live in a vacuum. Even though we care about spurring economic development and bringing more business downtown, obviously that's our top priority. When we started this project, we're looking at recognizing the other commitments and priorities and obligations of the town, including diversity and housing, which has been a priority of several different boards and committees for many years. So, you know, I'm sort of surprised to see it sort of come full circle and getting a lot of pushback on this point of diversity in housing, because when I started this process, I thought this was a point of togetherness and sort of camaraderie, and that we were all looking for some. Obviously, we don't want giant apartment complexes downtown. That wouldn't be appropriate at all. But in a mixed use setting, allowing for a certain number of diversity in housing, which will spur economic development because they'll allow people to come into town that otherwise, and to work in these businesses that otherwise might not be able to afford it, and will spur diversity in every sense of the word, and age, and allowing places potentially for people to downsize and stay in town. There's lots of positive benefits for having a diversity in housing stock that every board and committee has acknowledged that that is a deficiency of this town. So again, all these things sort of tie together. We're not in a silo here, and I'm sort of surprised that it's come back to, for lack of a better word, accusations that we're making this a housing bylaw, because that's not it. But mixed use is an important piece of economic development, and it's an important piece of moving our town successfully into the future.
Thank you. Mimi?
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that the 10% minimum requirement for non-residential uses is part of the mixed use definition. It's not a typo. That's what's, although the planning board changed it, but that's what went all the way up through version 9. That 10% of the gross floor area of the structure shall be occupied by non-residential use. So that's where the 90% comes from. And there's nothing that precludes non-residential uses from being on floors other than the first floor. Hudson has non-residential uses on second and third floors in their downtown. So you can mix things up any way you want. The issue with having such a low requirement for the commercial is that you're not encouraging commercial at all. You'll just get residential. And there've been many case studies of large mixed use buildings that have the big commercial space on the first floor and 2 or 3 floors of apartments, and that commercial space has remained vacant because the developer and the landlord gets the income they need from the residential, and they don't have to go after the commercial space occupancy. So I don't think that's what we're looking for either in the downtown.
Again, Lisa, nobody's arguing for 10%. No one. It's an entirely straw man, Mimi. No one is arguing for 10%.
But
they're arguing for less than 40%. Those are two different things.
But I think what the planning board changed, Marty, was what was written, and what was written was 10%. Whether it was an error or whether it was wrong, that's what was presented through the public hearings to the planning board.
Lisa, I understand that. My point is there's 30 points between 10 and 40. No one is arguing for 10. No one. If anybody's arguing for 10, raise your hand. No one. So can we put that aside? The question is, does 40 make sense? And it doesn't, in my view, and for all the reasons that have been stated here. And again, I don't know whether it's intentional or but the effect of it is pernicious in terms of actual mixed use. It really is. And that's why I think it's really important that it be voted on by the town, because the town can decide. I hope they decide the right thing, but if they don't, they've decided.
All right, let's open it up to other members of the board. Ms. Malinowski? I don't know if we answered your questions, but you originally started this discussion. It kind of went down a different path, but that's okay. Discussion's good.
So I don't think I have any more follow-up. I guess the answer to my question, and Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you don't want a percentage at all to define the max amount of residential. Is that fair? That's what I'm trying to get to.
Julie, you're muted.
Julie is muted, but yes, I think that is what we're saying.
But I have to say, I'm willing to if there is a valid reason to have a cap on the residential, we already have said that anything first floor, street facing, based on the lot structure is probably everything, unless maybe we can put and I'd be fine to have, say, all of first floor is commercial. The only reason we left just a little bit of an opening and said all street facing first floor is commercial is because we wanted to leave the door open for an opportunity potentially to put in a handicapped accessible residential unit on the first floor if that were appropriate. I thought that was the right thing to do. I haven't heard anybody say that's not the right thing to do, but other than that, first floor needs to be commercial. I think everybody is in agreement on that. The problem with then saying only 40% of a building can be residential is if you take that first floor and put a second floor on it, and that second floor is 50% of the building, and you want to put residential units there, you can't. That doesn't even include the thought of putting on a third floor, which is also allowed. So I think that the restrictions in place right now, as is, that say everything on the first floor that's street facing is commercial, are enough to make sure that the first floor is commercial use. If you want to say, if everybody says that it's too confusing to even leave a door open, even if it means, you know, or maybe there's a special permit, maybe forced, if you want to have a first floor residential unit specifically to allow for an ADA accessibility, then get a special permit. I don't know, maybe that's the answer because it seems to be confusing people, but we want commercial space on the first floor. On the second floor, we want residential. Maybe we want office. You can't really do commercial space on the second floor. That just doesn't work. Maybe office space works fine. A thriving community has a mix of residential and commercial uses. That's what we're going for. I'm sorry that 10% number was in there many months ago. We talked about taking it out. I don't know why it took so long to come out. That was a mistake. That's never what anybody wanted. But we want commercial on the first floor, and restricting the 40%. Restricting residential to 40% literally makes it not possible to have a first floor commercial space with a second floor of residential space. That's literally not possible right now. And that's my real concern here.
Ms. Malinowski. Did she freeze to only me or?
Her video looks frozen to me as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
it appeared frozen.
Okay, so Chelsea, we'll come back to you. We'll go, Mr. Stivers.
Thanks, Lisa. As I've commented on a number of these meetings previously, I agree with Mr. Healy that it's important to get this to town meeting. I think certainly and I guess many other folks involved here would probably write things a little bit differently in certain places. But I think the real issue is that it's important to get some structure in place here. And then it's much easier to get modifications to that structure down the road if we need to. I'm less concerned about having language currently that somehow will discourage, all development downtown. I got to believe that developers will find ways to do useful things even with the current language. Although I certainly, again, in the past, have said I'm in favor of relaxing the constraints on residential use. I'm fine with bumping up the FAR numbers a little bit. I'm in favor of adding to the number of units permitted, residential units permitted in these buildings. But it seems to me, again, the first choice is to get it to town meeting, let the voters decide, and hopefully get something in place that we can then modify as appropriate down the road as we discover constraints or problems with our key goal, which is to motivate investment in the downtown area. So again, I would hope that between now and town meeting, assuming we're going forward with this, that we can find ways to get the various interests here more aligned. And I again encourage people to continue to talking about this if we can't reach that resolution this evening, which may or may not happen here. But again, get it to town meeting and let's keep moving with it is my bottom line. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Stivers. And I will just add one thing before I go back to Ms. Malinowski, that planning board did leave the public hearings open. So public input will be allowed, at least through the meeting on the 18th. I believe it's the 18th, Mimi, isn't it? The next planning board meeting? Yes, okay. Ms. Malinowski, back to you.
Sorry, I don't know what happened. So I think your question is probably where I stand. So I hear what Julie and the EDC are saying. I appreciate the clarity around your position. I'm still in favor with bringing the article forward as written. And I don't know if Mr. Stivers talked about this at all or not, but on the 3 units, I actually think that makes sense, given that the 4th unit would trigger affordable housing. And I think that that is a lot to put on the building inspector. I think that once you get DHCD involved and you kind of have to go through that process, I do think that it makes sense to have more oversight once that gets triggered. So that's kind of my rationale for agreeing with the 4 units or the 3 units, up to 3 units.
Thank you. Mr. Dennington.
Thank you. So since I'm the last one to speak, I'll try to be pretty concise and brief. I think my position is very similar to Sam's. Marty, I listened carefully to what you said. I agree. I also think that in this process, I know, speaking for myself, I've become very focused on supporting something that has a realistic chance of passing town meeting and getting the 2/3 vote necessary. And I think that to do that, some things that have been critically important were, 1, to get positive feedback from the planning board, 2, to get positive feedback from people that live in the neighborhood. And I just think that I agree with what Sam is saying, that it's better to get something in place now. I think the key issue where, again, on the policy side, I agree with the EDC, but then just some practical considerations are what drive me to support what's written, with the hope that maybe the EDC and the planning board might, because the planning board is keeping the public hearing open, try to work some things out. Because I would just offer this for really for the EDC and the planning board's consideration. I think that the thing that came through with the public hearings is a concern about keeping the development small scale mixed use development. And a lot of that focused on the number of apartments that could possibly be built. I think that after the planning board established 3 as the special permit threshold, so that any building that would have more than 3 dwelling units would need a special permit if it was mixed use, that really, it seemed that the 40% requirement on top of that may be superfluous. And I think that the illustration that Julie made of just a simple 2-story building where there's commercial on the bottom floor and the second floor is all residential, why would we strictly prohibit that? You could at least allow it to go through a special permit process. So again, it doesn't go as far as Marty, I think you're really calling for, but we're thinking about what is possible. And I also think that Lisa has done a very good job here of steering together a bunch of disparate groups with different views. And I think she deserves a lot of credit for where we are. We are closer than ever to having a real substantial change in the downtown zoning and the ZAC issue. This is before my time. So I moved to town in 2013. So I don't know when ZAC was, a little bit before that, but just I had constantly heard about how that kind of hangs over. That is the ultimate illustration of where an ambitious thing wasn't able to work out. So this has been an ambitious thing that is very, very close to actually coming to town meeting and actually standing a good chance of passing, if we can bring ourselves to, get behind it and realize that we're not going to, each group is not going to get everything they want. But I don't like the idea of having this fall apart over an agreement about, this number of floors. That I understand they're important and they affect what gets built. But once we get in place the basic idea that there can be some mixed use by right, and and more possibility by special permit. That's something that doesn't exist right now at all. So I think it's a substantial improvement. So I think from the BOS standpoint, that I would be prepared to support what's printed in the draft warrant now. I'd also be prepared to support something that resulted from some further discussions between EDC and Planning Board. And this is jumping ahead a little bit, but there is a significant typo, I think, in the draft warrant and part of it that I think we should address, because I think it doesn't accurately reflect a Planning Board vote that came up. I don't know if you want to.
Andrew, do you want to just hold that until
Sure.
the next, we're going to actually go through the articles. So.
Okay, but it's important enough that we shouldn't forget it. So please remind me if we do.
Mr. Purple, you're the reminder. Make a note, please. Also, so I think, again, I appreciate the discussions that we're having here. You know, there's another planning board meeting on the 18th. And, you know, whether we all agree or not, I think the public is well served by the discussions that have taken place tonight. I think all bases are covered. And, you know, I think it's taken a lot to get everybody to this point. And I think it's something that, irregardless of where we go, and I probably sound like I'm speaking about the Zach, but, you know, irregardless of where this goes, I think there's much to be proud of from everybody that's involved, including the public. The public had, you know, many opportunities through 2 different sets of public hearings to have their voice heard. So at the end of the day, all I can say is thank everybody involved, thank the EDC, thank Planning Board and the Board of Selectmen, and let's see what we can do to move this forward at this point. So.
And Madam Chairwoman,
Yes.
I thank you for the opportunity. I would be remiss if I did not say that the simple act of getting the zoning through should not be enough for us to say it is a success. What we actually have to do is encourage the development and actually have zoning that's out there where developers want to make the choice between us and another community. If we have restrictive zoning, which some of the things that the Planning Board has put in are kept in place, we might have mixed use zoning and can pat ourselves on the back that we got it through and everyone came together. But unless we actually have developers willing to step up and start working with us to bring us the type of projects that we want, we're not going to see the downtown change. I come back to the fact that there are empty lots in our downtown. And the last time that there was any construction was 1978. That is almost as old as I am. And there are also buildings that could be rehabbed and refurbished and repurposed. The zoning should do that. I think what we need to do is try to be a little bit more inclusive and open and allow developers to bring projects forward so that we can have a discussion in a public section, not about proposed buildings, which may or may not be too high, that scare some of the people on the planning board, but actual projects where we can actually say, this is something that the town wants, and this is something that the town needs, like diversity of housing and smaller shops. So I think going forward, we're hopeful because the EDC has actually made a lot of compromises on what we had originally brought forward, that we do have some help from not only the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board to realize that an FAR at 0.3 is not going to work. Developers are not going to come forward. And that if we have a limiting factor of 3 housing units, developers are not going to come forward. What good is having a zoning change if no developer comes to the table? And I think that's one of the things that we debate at the EDC meeting, and we always welcome the public comment from those people coming as well. So as chair, once again, I want to say thank you, but I just want to make sure that people understood that just getting the zoning passed is not enough. We need a little bit more.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. So while we're going to move on from this discussion, would you like to adjourn your meeting, or are you going to stay through the end of our meeting? I mean, you can certainly raise your hand and we can, you know.
I'm going to go watch the Red Sox game, and I would encourage some of my other members to do as well. So I am actually going to accept a motion to adjourn the EDC's October 5th meeting.
So moved.
I heard Alan, I hear John a second. I'm going to do roll call vote. Alan,
Yes.
John Wood.
Yes, Sox are up by 3.
Okay, Julie Connolly.
Yeah.
Rob Anderson, yes. I'm assuming since Chris Robbins left, he's a yes as well. Rob Anderson, we're out. Thank you very much for adjourned.
Thank you, everybody. Very much.
Thank you for having us tonight, everybody. Have a wonderful night.
Thank
Go
you.
Sox.
Mimi, thank you for attending as well. Much appreciated.
Thank you, board. Have a good night.
Thank you, you too.
Thanks.
All right. That being said, we will continue on with updates and ordering of articles. So we can walk through these. Andrew, do you want to go to yours before I forget? I know Mr. Purple took a good note, but.
Yeah, it's C7. C7 of the Article 10.
Okay, C7 of Article 10. Okay. Under permitted uses, Andrew?
Permanent uses by special board from the planning board, 7.
Oh.
It says multi-family dwelling up to 12 units, not to exceed 10 units. So it's just a typo. It should be just, you should strike up to 12 units. 'cause
Correct.
the planning board- Okay.
Yeah, I think
And
so.
that
I'll go
was-
back and double check that as well.
Yeah, that was something that the town planner had brought to me. And so when I went through
Yep.
this tonight, I was going to mention that that was one of the things that was adjusted because it was an obvious typo.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. So I think we can, Mr. Purple, will go through the articles and if there's any updates that you would like to share, as well as any questions or comments of the board. My first question is to the board, does anybody have an issue with how we currently have the articles in the order that we have them? I mean, it's pretty basic. I mean, I think the downtown district as the last article is the important piece. So, and as far as anything else, everybody's going to be there anyway. I mean, the personnel bylaw, obviously the SAP change with Ms. Rosenblum. Does anyone have an issue with that being first? I guess we'll do it that way. No. Okay. So amend town code select board we never took Mr. Purple, sorry.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to point out one thing. So Miss Rosenblum was away last week on vacation, and when she did come back, she did add just some additional detail at the beginning of Article 1. You may notice the first 2 lines are essentially the same language. It's always at the beginning of any change to the SAP, but she did include a position titled Senior IT Specialist in Section 20, Schedule A at grade 7. So just a little bit more detail was added. So I just wanted to point that out before you went on.
Thank you, much appreciated. So on select board, we generally talked about doing this, but I don't know that the board has really had any substantive discussion or if this is something that we still want to continue to move forward. So we can kind of go down the line and kind of get everybody's thought process on where it stands. Mr. Stivers, we'll start with you this time.
Yeah, actually, we did talk about this. I think maybe Marty had departed for the mountaintops when we got to it. I don't remember.
Yeah, I think you're right, Sam, actually.
But we did go back and forth a while about it, and it seemed pretty clear that Chelsea, I, and Andrew were in favor of it. And you were not. Marty was unclear on it, so I'm not sure how much more we can talk about it.
I'm rarely unclear. Often wrong, but rarely unclear, Sam. My God.
Wrong, never in doubt. Only because you didn't have a chance to weigh in.
All right.
So again, Sam, absolutely, that was what happened. But I think having the full board just, again, touch on this and being able to include Marty in this is, I think, an important part of the discussion.
Let me just, here is, My second choice is, or maybe it's my third or fourth choice, is select board. I actually think it's a stupid word, or a stupid 2 words. I mean, if you look at the history where selectmen came from, it's part of Massachusetts, New England history. It was, to select men, and for better or worse, it was the way things were back in the 17th and 18th centuries, that for the most part, I mean, it wasn't until Donna McDaniel in the 1970s where there was a select woman in Southborough. I just think it's a stupid name. I'd prefer something like Board of Select Women and Select Men, which honors the history of where it came from. Select board, you're selecting a board. I mean, the history of it is you selected at that time men in the community. My preference would be to change it, but my preference would be to change it to something, number one, that makes sense. But number two, that kind of honors the history of where it came from. And I think Board of Select Women and Select Men would do that. That's my choice.
We'll go around the table. Sam, did you want to add something to that? You still have the floor.
Way too cumbersome for me. And, again, I think that there are a large number, an increasing number of towns who are using select board. I don't think there's any disrespect or whatever in that term. And I think we're getting in step with the times with that. So long overdue in my view.
Thank you. Mr. Dennington.
Yeah, I don't have anything really new to add based on the position I took before. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Malinowski.
Marty, that's an interesting idea. But I think it's too much. I understand where you're coming from.
Go big or go home, Chelsea.
And my position hasn't changed.
Okay. So I looked into this a lot more. And it's interesting being on the MSA board and going to the new local governance committee and whatnot, that through the MMA and the MSA I'm on, the majority of people representing our select boards, which kind of surprised me when I took a look at our last swearing in meeting, is I went back and I looked. I completely get where you're coming from, Marty. And I also, again, I voted initially not to move this forward. Well, not to support it, not to not move it forward, but as much as, I get asked all the time, I'm going to give it from a female perspective. I get asked all the time by people, how would you like me to address you? And I just say, selectman, select woman, kind of whatever you want. I think select board may alleviate that from people asking that question. In researching this as well, I found a lot of towns are going to select board. So I'm leaning more towards my counterparts than I was originally on this one. It just seems to be, and again, just because somebody else isn't doing it doesn't mean, we have to, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on this one. I think I'm the majority has
I'll keep trying. Again, I'm fine with select board. I just think it's dumb. I think Brookline was the first town to do it, which sort of underscores how dumb it was. But and I've heard people say that and again, Donna McDaniel was the first female member of the Board of Selectmen. I don't know what Donna called herself. Probably just Donna, but maybe she called herself a select woman, maybe a select man. I don't know. But one of the things I've heard is that the Board of Selectmen, and I get this. If you're a young girl or a not so young girl, and the message it sends is that regardless of where it came from historically, that it was a Board of Select Men. I'm not sure what select board does for that. Board of Select Women and Select Men underscores that this is a board for women and men, as opposed to, again, what I think is a stupid name for the entity that represents a town. again, I think it should change. And if select board is the only option, I'm fine with select board. But honestly, what's wrong with Southborough charting its own course here? And maybe other towns will realize that that they should have, what did it Robert Frost said, the road less traveled. That's my choice here.
If we ruled out all stupid names that government comes up with, Marty, that would cut out a lot of stuff going on. So
yeah, but that's the definition of insanity, Sam. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
We did that with Board of Selectmen. Now we're trying something different. Yeah, clearly the votes are here, so let's keep moving.
Yeah, as it stands today, am I unmuted?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, it was still coming up that I was muted. So, as it stands today, we'll continue to move forward on these. One of the things I had mentioned to Mr. Purple as well as we're going through the articles this Thursday, when we meet with advisory, the goal would be able to take positions potentially on, the articles. And one of the things I'd asked Mr. Purple, and I guess it had been done prior, many years ago, before my time, I guess, was they actually put what the vote of the board was. And I know we've participated in a lot of meetings where somebody will ask the question, where did the vote, what was the actual vote of the board? So I suggested to Mr. Purple that maybe for this town meeting specifically, and hopefully going forward, if and when we take those positions, it's printed in the warrant next to, instead of just saying support. Because I think, again, if somebody doesn't support an article, I think it's just as important as those that do. So, and I think the public has a right to know that. So that's just a suggestion I had given to Mr. Purple that I hope the board will be supportive of as well.
I agree.
Okay. All right, I'm hearing no no's. We're going to continue on. Board of Health and Personnel Benefits. Oh, Andrew.
Sorry, but just thinking ahead to have the most productive discussion on Thursday.
Yes.
About taking positions on articles. I reviewed it and just wanted to talk about Article 4, where it's a request to levy $85,000 for IT server replacements. And Sam had asked a question about, aren't we moving to the cloud, et cetera? And my apologies, I don't remember if we concluded that discussion at the last meeting, but I'm just hopeful that we have, the most accurate information about that coming into Thursday's vote. And I'd be curious what Jay thinks about Jay Montijo, Municipal Technology Committee, Capital Planning. That'll be useful information for the vote on Thursday, just so I understand, what the context of it.
Yep, and I think you'll have that information,
Andrew,
as we go through. Just quickly, Chelsea, sorry. Is there anything you want to add regarding the Board of Health or personnel benefits? In advance of Thursday.
So I can just give you a quick, this would be to fully fund the two positions for health director and public health nurse from 11/1 through the remainder of the year. So we were able to take advantage of FEMA Cares, and we have contracts signed through 6/30 for both employees. So this is to increase the budget to cover both their salary and benefits.
That was pretty concise. I mean, we can obviously get through more discussion on these on Thursday, but if somebody has something they want to, throw out to Chelsea now, that's fine too. Mr. Purple.
Is one other item I just want to point out. It leads on to the next page. In discussions with the town accountant, as she is tying out and closing out her year and doing her balance sheet. The Water Enterprise Fund, the annual assessment that we have for MWRA, it was, we assumed it was going to be, a significant increase, and that was how we budgeted the budget. And when we when the assessment was actually set, it's about $150,000 high, too high. In other words, it's come in $150,000 lower And in terms of the balance sheet and the accountant and speaking with the Department of Revenue, it would make things easier to balance everything out if that amount was reduced. And so since we've got an article in there that we're making budget adjustments, and town council had opined that it is acceptable to do all of those adjustments within the same article, that has been added into the article as well. And since it's a reduction, I don't see that it really should cause any angst.
Okay, thank you. Traffic study. That's still moving in the same direction. Advisory membership, and Kathy and advisory will speak to that tomorrow. The next three are gyms. Town meeting, location and availability, and then that leads us obviously at the end to the downtown district. So tonight we need to approve and sign the final warrant as we have just discussed, to move this forward. So do we have a motion to sign and approve the final warrant as presented?
So move.
Okay.
Stick to the change on the typo.
Yes, exactly. The change on the typo. Thank you, Andrew.
With Andrew's typo change.
With Andrew typo's change. Okay. Do we have a second? I know that we're kind of both together. Sam or Marty?
It was my motion. I beat him that time.
You did. So
Second.
Sam, thank you, Sam. Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Ms. Melanowski,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
Aye.
and Ms. Braccio. Aye. Great. Thank you very much for that. Go ahead, Andrew.
When you say we voted to sign it, we need to actually come to the townhouse and sign it. Okay.
We do. We do.
When will that be ready?
Make a note of my
tomorrow.
Yeah, I would say that would probably be ready by 10 o'clock in the morning. I could send an email out to the board. But if Mr. Hegarty was still here, he would tell you that he needs wet signatures.
Yeah.
So, and like I said, if you want to make it easier, I need a majority of the board to sign it. Unless everyone really wants to sign it, I can always send something out saying I have three. Unless, somebody wants to come in and make sure that it is signed.
I can
So
come in.
I can come in as well.
I can come in.
Okay. All right, we are good. There you go. You're
Okay,
five.
all five.
All five will be coming at some point tomorrow.
Okay.
That leads us to C, continuation of Q4 financial review, EEA grant. Ms. Melanowski.
Thank you, Ms. Braccio. I had asked for this to be put on the agenda for tonight at our last meeting, or second to last meeting. So as part of the FY21 review, I had some questions on EDC's consulting budget because almost all of it was used. And when that budget was presented and discussed in May of 2020, I was on advisory and was told that the purpose of the budget was to apply for grants, including grants on Route 9. So as I looked at the details, it led to some more questions I had about how EEA grant funds and in-kind funds related to those grants were spent in FY21. And my finding was that up to $2,500 of grants and town funds were spent on advocacy materials for the downtown district. And I had been under the impression that town funds, including budgets or reimbursements from grants, could not be spent on advocacy for a position on a warrant article. So to be sure, I sought town council opinion on this. And the answer from council is that policymaking boards can use town funds to advocate such a position. So I actually didn't know that. And so since I got that opinion, I went through and read the EDC bylaw, and I don't believe or read it as that they're a policymaking board. So I would like this board's thoughts on bringing a policy forward to eliminate any ambiguity and to ensure the integrity and credibility of any grant processes coming forward before us.
I'm surprised by town council's advice. That's interesting.
Mhm.
I didn't think town funds could be used, but the interesting thing, but now, and I'm not sure if you asked him this, Chelsea, when does the potential for advocacy kick in? In other words, does there have to be a warrant article pending? Is it enough that a warrant article is in discussion? Is it enough that a warrant article has been, passed on for purposes of what is the trigger? Or if that hasn't been asked, maybe that's a good question for us to ask.
I'm not sure that I'm going to answer your question, but if the materials advocate for saying yes to something, that would be the trigger. So I don't know that it's necessarily a timing issue with where it is in the process, but educational materials are within bounds of expenditures. But anything, saying vote yes is kind of where you get into the advocacy discussion.
No, I get that, but vote yes on what? I guess that's my.
Well, in this case, it says vote yes for the downtown district.
Oh, it did. Okay. All right.
Yeah. I think anything though related to something that has to go to the ballot, you can't do. So that's kind of where the line is drawn with that piece. But
as I said, I'm surprised that means that the Board of Selectmen can.
Yes.
Jeez.
Not something I would ever do, Marty. Let me
Not
tell
sure
you.
that's a very good idea.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. I would never
And-
support that.
Yeah.
And who is and who isn't a policy-making board? I think that's another.
Well, so that's where the ambiguity piece comes in, Sam.
Yeah.
And that's why I think we as a board need to decide if we need to put some guardrails in place here, because I think some mistakes were made on this, and I think we need to tighten up our process and put something in writing that gives guidance on this particular issue.
I agree. And town council obviously would have some opinions on it, but it's worth clarifying, certainly, I think.
Andrew?
So Chelsea, I'm very glad you brought this up, because I know this is related to a concern that Mr. Kalenda had also expressed about planning board advocacy for the illumination bylaw. So, in terms of what specifically to do, I think maybe some boards just are not really cognizant of the issue, maybe, and that just some simple information might be helpful. If just like we drafted a policy about over the years of different things, of just a 1 or 2 page document, and then just get distributed, and it's not really it's the policy of at least the Board of Selectmen or Select Board to I'm not going to try to define it right now, but don't use town money to advocate for the passage or defeat of a article at town meeting. You can educate people about it, and then just to encourage people that if they have a question, to contact the town administrator or town council about it.
Andrew, I'm just going to piggyback a little bit on what you just said. When this issue came up regarding the planning board, that bill was never submitted to the town. That was covered by whomever, had taken care of that. So I guess, Chelsea, my question to you is, did council talk about, and I'm all for putting guardrails in place, and mistakes are made, and I completely get that. But is there any suggestion from council as far as a remedy to the fact that funds were spent in a way that they may not have should have been spent? Did he give you any guidance on that at all?
No. And I think it's something that I can follow back up with him based on kind of the direction that this board is going in. I sought opinion on if it was within the bounds of a board or committee to do. And so I think where there's some gray area here, you know, and I'm just one person, you know, reading the bylaw, but my personal feeling is that we should not be entering, you know, using funds to do that, even if as a board of selectmen. But no, I do not have a solution for the funds that were expended already.
So I'm gonna ask you one other question. Do you know, Sam, and I'll come to you next. I'm just trying to think of in the past when advocacy happened. And you might know the answer to this because of Jason, but when the public safety building was being promoted for town meeting, I know that there were signs made. You may not know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask, do you have any knowledge of how those signs were purchased and what funds were used for that?
Yeah, they used their personal funds from the Public Safety Study Committee. That group paid for them themselves.
Okay.
So I'm not aware of an advocacy use in town. I haven't come across one. So I just was surprised when council did that.
No, and again, I appreciate the due diligence that, you know, we put a lot of trust in you to be our finance liaison, and I think you've done a great job. Sam, go ahead.
A good point, Chelsea. I guess it's certainly worth thinking about some more. I'm concerned about one aspect here, in that if we have a committee that we've appointed to do something, it seems to me that it's a little unreasonable to tie their hands in terms of saying we come up with a proposal that we want town meeting to adopt and the selectmen to support, for example, but we can't spend our budget money on explanatory material saying, here are the reasons that you should support this for handout at town meeting, for example. So it seems to me that it's worth trying to think of a way that we don't tie people's hands unreasonably for these kinds of things, but yet clearly we don't want, you know, town funds going to things that people shouldn't be spending money on, so forth. I don't actually have a great answer to that, but I'd certainly like to think about it. It seems to me there's reason value in balancing some of those things.
Even as we're talking, I'm looking. I'm the virtue of having multiple screens. You know, I'm researching. I wondered if it was the Office of Campaign and Political Finance, which is Michael Sullivan's shop. And not surprisingly, there are a couple of, maybe you've seen these, Chelsea, I don't know. But it is murky. It's murky about, and it does actually, it does impact the timing. So I think having Jay, I mean, he'll know to go right to these and look at it, but I think it's for our own benefit. It will be helpful to have this spelled out so that we're so that nobody's stubbing their toe about something like this.
Right.
Anyway,
and Lisa, just one clarification. You asked about the signs specifically for public safety. The committee members spent their own money on the brochures, not the signs. The signs were the association.
Okay. Oh, that would make sense. The police and fire. Okay. Yeah. And I mean, I remember from Chestnut Hill, and I was on the Open Space Commission. Again, we had a tiny budget, I think $150 at the time. And we wanted to send out something or do something. And, you know, we were specifically told you can't use taxpayer funds to advocate. And, you know, but Sam, to your point, I think informational material is different than actually advocating for something. I think there's a very fine line there.
Yep.
So, yeah. So again, Chelsea, when you talk to council, I would just like to know if he, again, I appreciate you coming up with how we proceed forward and putting guardrails in place again for this, but I would just be curious as to his thoughts about a remedy or any potential, I don't know, maybe a liability that's been created by using funds this way. So if you could, in your next conversation with him, and, you know, we can certainly discuss
Okay.
this more in more detail, but
Okay.
would the board be favorable of Chelsea at least coming up with, Chelsea, I'm going to volunteer you, some form of like draft policy or something along the lines? You've had the conversations with council, kind of
Yeah.
what you're thinking. And then, you know, we can put this on and, you know, we can discuss this further and, you know, decide what path that we as a board
Yeah.
would like to go.
Okay. And to my knowledge, these materials have not been used yet.
They haven't been distributed. They've just been purchased. Okay.
As far as I know. Yes.
Okay. 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 Any further questions or anything we'd like from Chelsea to get to council? Get
Yeah,
from council?
just, yeah. Do people know not to distribute these?
No.
Then
So
Mark,
I did
Mark-
not, I did my digging, on my, kind of on my own, and wanted to talk to this board because I didn't want to make a decision unilaterally. And I felt more comfortable kind of knowing where, just because in my opinion, it's not like super clear cut, and I just didn't feel comfortable.
I will tell you, just having looked at it, I mean, number one, the Board of Selectmen can't do it. No one can spend money on a particular ballot question for advocacy. Board of Selectmen, Planning Board, whoever can't do it. Just off of this 2015 decision from the Office of Campaign and Public Finance. The exception is you can do it for purposes of because you can advocate for passage. It's almost like a state Hatch Act. But we can't spend money on ballot questions either. So nobody gets the idea that the only thing holding us back is our own restraint. We can't do it either. But if we now are aware, it strikes me that the problem comes from an advocacy standpoint. And if we are aware that there might be, even if it's a murky area, that there might be some documentation that would either come close to or go over the line of advocacy. I think we should let this is the EDC. I think we should let the EDC know that make them aware of this issue so that hopefully they make the right decision and leave them in the drawer they're currently in.
Be an unforced error to distribute these.
Yeah,
materials.
exactly.
Yeah.
So Mark, can you take care of that? Or Chelsea, do you want to do it?
Either way.
Yeah. Does that make sense? Well,
It does. It
yeah.
does.
Yeah.
Okay.
It does. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and we'll put this when we get further clarifications as we go forward. And Marty, that'll give you additional time to read all about it as well. And
Oh yeah, reading these. Anyway, Michael Sullivan's a good guy. So
that's great.
all right.
So, okay, that leads us to D, Board of Health update. Ms. Malinowski.
Okay, so I just wanted to give a quick update on Dr. Fazen's report that I believe some subset of this group, as well as many others, were interviewed on. That report I have electronically now, and I will be sending it out this week to boards and committees, department heads, and those who I know that were interviewed. He will be doing a public forum on October 21st at 7 p.m. on Zoom, and that will be recorded. So whoever is not able to attend that live can watch it after the fact. There'll be he'll give the presentation, and then there'll be a Q&A session. So certainly if you have any questions and can't attend and want to send the questions in ahead of time, I can definitely read them into the record. If that's of interest to anyone. So we will be advertising that to try to get as much public participation in that. So just wanted to give this board an update.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Malinowski. Any questions on that before we move on? All right, next up, we are going to do our final public comment. Thank you for those. Mr. Robbins, your hand was still up from earlier. We have Mr. Fling. If we could bring him over, anyone else? Mr. Robbins, if you could leave your hand up. If you still want to speak, we'll do, okay, it's still up. And Mr. Fling.
Good
we'll
evening.
go to you first. Good evening, how are you? Welcome.
I'm good, thank you. I just have a couple things that I'd like to just bring up in a quick rapid fire fashion. The town meeting current setup in the split room situation. I just want to encourage or bring up the idea that I expect that there will be a lot of discussion at this one in attendance. So I just have concerns about the current setup, the lack of visuals, and how that might be for participating. I'm also curious how families might be positioned within the room if you have more than one family member coming to the meeting, and how what the capacity differences might be if you have couples sitting together, for example. I'd like to encourage the idea of maybe QR codes, as restaurants have adopted in plenty of other places, as an idea of a solution to a visual medium that takes care of being able to see things, and have that printed inside the warrant article. So that way you can actually reference these materials, especially in color. So that kind of covers that idea of the town meeting piece. I do actually have concerns with the masks at the microphones. It's very hard sometimes to have the speaker understood clearly. So I'd like to maybe just consider the speaker having a separate mask mandate, since we are doing that, but something to think about as well, just for clarity's sake and conversation. For the downtown district, the FAR chart that was showed earlier has most buildings today at a 0.3 FAR, and they are not multi-use. So any sort of change to that would be far exceeding probably what the 0.3 FAR would be, adding either a vertical or expanded first floor. So I'd like to just kind of have that consideration kept forefront for any future conversations, that maybe the 0.3 might be restrictive for expanded use. Those were my only comments.
Wonderful. Andrew?
After Fling's comment made me, I apologize for not raising this before, but in the warrant, at the very end about the downtown district, the portion where part 7 is adding the map, but we did not have the map in the warrant. Okay, so I guess my question is, I think at a prior meeting where we discussed this, we talked about, does it need to be a separate article? I don't know if anyone else has noticed this. Should the map be the map which the planning board agreed on? Should that map be included in the printed warrant?
So council has opined it didn't need to be a separate article, but if the board wants to add it into the actual warrant, that's something that can be done.
But Mark, if it goes in the actual warrant, then it becomes part of the code. And there's no other, in other words, I don't think there's, maybe I'm wrong, but if you look at the town code, there's no maps in there.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
We certainly
but we do have a Southborough zoning map, which is in a official, legally binding document, which shows where these kind of has the force of it. The question is just, you can anticipate a question coming up about this at the town meeting before. Okay, we know the boundaries of the map that have been agreed on by that the planning board has suggested. A lot of people don't. Is this something that we should remedy now? And I apologize because I know that we just took the vote to approve this, but just want to make sure we
want to do a handout at the meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with Marty that the map isn't part of the code, but we do, under section 7, part 7, amend article 2, establishment of district zoning map by adding the new downtown district to the Southborough zoning map. Mr. Purple, I don't know the answer to that. And again, we can't look back at past zoning, because the last time there was a zoning change was 1993, I think it was, as far as a true zoning change. And that's when the business village was enacted.
That was like town council question.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm looking at the,
I see Mr. Miller has his hand raised.
No, we'll bring him over as well, Andrew.
well, the way it works is, I'm looking at the zoning code. And Andrew, I think what you described is what's going to happen. It says the location and boundaries of zoning districts as shown on the zoning map of the town of Southborough, dated April 9, 1984, as from time to time amended by votes of the town meeting, which map is hereby incorporated into and made a part of the chapter. So the map needs to be, the map is, again, town council, I'm my wife kids me that you know, I try to put on a town council hat and I don't want to, but it just seems like the zoning map is referenced in the article. If a zoning map is referenced in the article and it's adopted by town meeting, then by virtue of the zoning code 174.4, it's then incorporated in the zoning map of the town of Southborough, which is made part of the chapter by the specific language of the chapter. So that is my read of the way the statute and the map interacts. I don't think we need to change the vote we took tonight, but well,
If
Mark,
we
now-
do, I mean, if Mark can reach out to council in the morning, and I think it's a pretty easy answer to a
it would be a
question.
couple of words that maybe are or are not in that part 7. But again, the code itself takes care of it by the way, it's incorporating language. It's just a question of making sure what vote needs to be taken at town meeting for the map to be, what's the language? Amended by votes at town meeting. So the map would have to be amended by the votes at the town meeting. Again, I think that there's sufficient reference in the article for that, but let's have Mr. Tallerman weigh in. Does that make sense, Andrew?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
You ought to have
And
a
Mark-
handout though at town meeting for the map.
Agreed, Sam. Absolutely. Among others, and I think we can talk about that as we get closer to town meeting as well. So Mark, if you could find that out in the morning, then if we're good, we're good. If we're not good,
It really seems pretty straightforward, because I'm looking at part 7. It says amend Article 2, establishment of districts 174.4. That's what I was reading from.
Yep.
So
is this similar to a lot of the other votes tonight? If it's a ministerial change, you're good. And if it's a substantive change,
I'm not sure how it could be anything but a procedural ministerial.
I
It's
agree.
not- It's not substantive at all.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Andrew, are you good till we get that answer?
Yes, and then the version of the map that we talked about is the one that the planning board. approved
Correct.
there.
Correct. With the split lots and the CSX lot out.
But,
All right.
but again, that's the nature of town meeting. That can be amended.
Correct.
But that's the one that is to be incorporated as part of the warrant.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Robbins, we will go to you next, sir. If you're still here. I think he may have left because he was on there twice.
He's still here, but he's muted.
Right, but he was on there twice earlier, Sam. So I don't know if he was on 2 devices and he may have left. We'll come back to you, Mr. Robbins, if you're here. Mr. Miller, welcome.
Hi, board, and thank you for recognizing me. And I put my full faith and credit in Mr. Tallerman's opinion with regard to the map. I had raised my hand just to urge you to memorialize your decision to accept the planning board's version of a revised map, so that you went forward to town meeting with some kind of clarity for voters so that they fully understood what they were getting and would be more likely to support what you were advancing. That said, I actually wanted to speak beyond the issue of the map. I think, and I'll be very, very brief because we're in hour four and a half. That, you know, boards, committees, commissions take a lot of brickbats in the course of their business. But can I offer a couple of bouquets tonight at the risk of embarrassing anybody? One was for Ms. Malinowski, because I am very grateful. And I think the conversation about grant usage for advocacy and the sort of cautionary tale that was offered here was really quite inspiring and informative to me. And I learned a lot as a sort of new member of a town commission. And it should be kind of required viewing, I think, for everybody who serves on a board or commission in town. It was very interesting, very informative. I'm very appreciative of Ms. Malinowski for bringing this forward and for the conversation among the entire board on the point. Again, and I'll leave it at that. It was quite instructive. The other point I wanted to make was that I am very grateful to Ms. Braccio for her comments about the downtown district tonight, because what she did was bring forward something that personally, as someone who's watched live or on tape the next morning, every single meeting of every board, commission, and committee that's been involved in this for the past year, Ms. Braccio brought forward something that's been sorely lacking on a good many of these calls, and that is facts, data, numbers with regard to the floor area ratio. And again, it was a conversation that I found highly instructive, highly informative, and extremely, extremely helpful. And so I don't want to embarrass Ms. Braccio or Ms. Malinowski any further with a lot of praise, but I mean that quite sincerely. It was worth staying here till 10:25 to say that you did us a favor tonight on those 2 points. And I don't want to leave the rest of you folks out. You all did a great job tonight, just hanging in there and participating. But thank you very much. And again, full faith and credit in Mr. Talman with regard to the map, but I do urge you to memorialize it before we get to town meeting. Thanks very much.
Wonderful, Mr. Miller. Thank you for hanging around as long as you did. Much
And the
appreciated.
Sox are ahead, by the way. So
They are.
yeah. Good night.
That's a good thing. Good night, Mr. Miller. Mr. Robbins, we're going to give you one more opportunity. If you are here, and I see Chelsea's back. Thank you. All right. At this point, I would assume.
Chelsea, did you miss the bouquet?
Did I miss the?
You did.
She was checking.
You
the
missed
website.
a significant. Here's the concise summary. Kevin is very appreciative of you bringing up the point about the use of EDC funds in relation to advocacy.
Okay.
And he appreciated the conversation that took place. So he
Okay.
yes,
Excellent.
he very much appreciated, Chelsea. And he understood, again, he very much appreciated the whole conversation. So,
Okay.
That being said, all right, we have no further public comment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Mr. Healy, who just got back on. You get to lead now.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what happened, but aye.
All right, and Ms. Milanowski.
I better be able to watch the game.
Yeah, there you go. And Ms. Brush.